Immortal Cultivation begins with time management. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101. Fairy Sound Cloud Platform, Jade Pool, Golden Lotus, the vast sea of clouds and the long iron chain bridge. The other side is not visible in front, and the origin is not visible behind. Even though Zhu is very smart and knows that this bridge cannot have no end, she can't help but feel inexplicably nervous. Fortunately, her senior brother is by her side. Mirror noticed her thoughts and quickly and quietly withdrew the aura of the character. So Zhu gradually found that the palm of her senior brother's hand gave her a warm feeling, as if injecting strength into her. If she knew what the suspension bridge effect was, she would understand that in a critical situation, girls will instinctively develop dependence and affection for the boys around them. This is a natural physiological phenomenon evolved by humans. Of course, junior sister Zhu didn't understand this either. She just held onto her senior brother's hand and moved her legs desperately to rush forward. The Yu-Jie sword swayed beside her, ready to shoot out at any time. After an unknown amount of time, the two finally arrived at the other side smoothly. Here, there is a white cloud platform, with clear water as spring, white jade as brick, and ethereal fairy music singing in the distance, making the surroundings more ethereal and holy. What the hell is this? Mirror said, even if it was built to imitate the West Queen Mother's palace, it's too outrageous to play music every day. Isn't it noisy? Is there no atmosphere group in the West Queen Mother's palace? Time asked. What is an atmosphere group? Mirror sighed. Of course not, the queen likes quietness. Who is the queen? Time asked knowingly. Of course it's the Queen Mother of the West. Jing said, but she has left this world for a long time. A Jin, I'd like to hear the details. That's a long story. In short, in the past 10,000 years, the fairyland has become increasingly distant from the human world, and now it is almost impossible for heaven and man to interfere with each other. Jing said with a melancholy tone, if not for this, I wouldn't be the only one in this world busy with the work of repairing the sky. If you are willing to listen, we can talk about it later. Now we should find a way to leave here first. Let me tell you. The divine fire doe has an almost fanatical fascination and pursuit of the immortal cave heaven, so I guess that since this place was built in imitation of the Queen Mother of the West Temple, the terrain and environment should be similar. If that's the case, then in the backyard of the temple, in the peach forest, there is a linjing that leads to the lower world, which corresponds to the exit from this secret realm. Time nodded when he heard this, and turned to his junior sister and said, as far as I know, the divine fire doe has an almost fanatical fascination and pursuit of the immortal cave heaven. He repeated the analysis of the mirror, and Zhu frowned slightly surprised. So the exit is most likely in the backyard of the palace. Well, anyway, we can only explore this place, there is no other way. That's right. Time agreed, but if we keep moving forward, we will definitely encounter other dangers such as golden armored warriors. Junior sister, you just follow behind me closely and don't walk around without permission. Of course. Zhu said coldly. Also, senior brother, can you let go of my hand first? Time was slightly startled, then he noticed that he was still holding his junior sister's hand. He quickly smiled and let her go. Zhu gently rubbed his left hand, which had just been held, with his right hand, and asked with a slightly unnatural expression, should we go directly to the front of the temple? Or should we explore the Yuntai first? It's better to be careful and explore it clearly. Time replied, if there are dangers like golden armor warriors here, and we don't know it, we will be blocked at both ends and attacked from both sides if we continue to go deeper, which will be troublesome. That's right. Zhu nodded. The two began to explore the Yuntai. Although the Yuntai is large, there are not many buildings that block the view, only the pool, the sky gate, and the arcade. Time and Zhu came to the pool and saw withered lotus leaves and shriveled lotus pots in the pool. It seems that after thousands of years, they are basically dead. Mirror suddenly said, it's actually the real Yochai golden lotus. Where did these people get it from? Yochai golden lotus. It's a rare immortal spiritual object in this world. Eating its lotus seeds can open the acupoints all over the body, increasing the efficiency of breathing and refining ki. I see, then is there an illusion trap by the pool? No trap. Mirror replied. So Qiu Chang's hand flew the jade dragon sword and rolled directly into the pool. Zhu Yingyan was startled and quickly picked up the Yujie sword to be on guard until she confirmed that there were no formations or traps in the Ochai. Then she slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Senior brother is too reckless. What if he triggers a hidden ban? She thought to herself and wanted to teach her senior brother a lesson, but then she changed her mind and thought, could it be that senior brother noticed some details that confirmed that there were no traps or formations here, so he acted decisively? Yes, in any case, it was proved that senior brother did not make a mistake in the end. If I rashly teach him a lesson, he will use his evidence to ridicule me, which will make me look like I am not careful. Humph, I won't be fooled by my senior brother. Invincible character, synchronization value +1. Qiu Chang's was speechless when he heard the prompt, but his face remained calm. He carefully peeled the shriveled lotus pot that was swept by the sword light, and finally found 2 intact lotus seeds. Would you like to eat the golden lotus seeds from your Ochai? He gave one to his junior sister. Can this lotus seed be eaten? Zhu Yingyan pinched the lotus seed with 2 fingers suspiciously and looked at it carefully in the light. Of course. Qiu Chang's said confidently, and asked Kunlun Mirror in his heart, right? The spiritual objects of the immortals will lose spiritual power over time at most, but they can still be eaten. Kunlun Mirror gave the answer. So Qiu Chang's threw the lotus seeds into his mouth and chewed them. Well, it was as crispy as French fries and as hard as fried peas. In short, the taste was not very good, and I didn't feel anything after eating it. Seeing that her senior brother acted quickly, junior sister Zhu naturally wanted to be left behind and threw it directly into her mouth. Cough. Cough cough cough. This time, it slipped into her throat and got stuck in her esophagus, irritating her to cough violently. Qiu Chang's hurried over to help her pat her back. Zhu Yingyan tightened her chest and swallowed hard. She finally managed to swallow it down, avoiding becoming the first cultivator in history to choke to death. Then she turned her head and glared at Qiu Chang's Junior sister, don't worry. Qiu Chang's smiled gently. This lotus seed is a spiritual object from the fairy world. Although a lot of spiritual energy has been lost, it should still have the effect of opening the acupoints throughout the body, increasing the efficiency of breathing spiritual energy. Zhu Yingyan was immediately moved. This improved the efficiency of breathing spiritual energy, which directly affected the efficiency of cultivation upgrades. Even a little improvement would be extremely valuable. Thinking of this, she turned her head to look at the lotus pot on the ground and couldn't help but check it again. Unfortunately, Qiu Chang's was not wrong. There were indeed only 2 lotus seeds in it, no more. Zhu Yingyan was still not giving up, and stretched her neck to look into the Ochai again, trying to confirm whether there were any undiscovered lotus pots in the pond. Qiu Chang's found it funny, so he asked her, Junior sister, are you looking for koi in the pond? Zhu Yingyan's cheeks flushed slightly. Hearing that her senior brother was laughing at her, she forced an explanation and said, I'm just wondering why there is a pillar in the middle of the pond. Don't you think it's abrupt? Qiu Chang's followed her gaze and saw a short pillar in the middle of the Ochai, which was exposed above the water. There was a group on the top of the pillar, and a mirror was placed on it. That's the Ochai mirror stand. Kunlun Mirror said faintly, I was in the palace of the Queen Mother of the West, and I was placed on the Ochai mirror stand, silently shining on all living beings, and I didn't know how many years it would last. Really? Qiu Chang's looked at the mirror on the mirror stand. As his eyes fell on the mirror seemed to flash a faint and undetectable strange light. Chapter 102. Back to the past, time puzzle. After walking a few dozen steps forward, the view suddenly became clear. The 4 people were seen on a cliff platform. In the distance was an endless sea of clouds, and only a long iron chain bridge connected to this side. A tall golden armored warrior stood at the bridge head, holding a long sword in his hand, eyes closed and motionless. Qiu Chang's tried it and found that he could not control the sword here, so he carefully observed the golden armored warrior. Suddenly, he heard Kunlun Mirror in the sea of consciousness say in surprise, What's going on? What's wrong, Arjun? Qiu Chang's frowned and asked. Kunlun Mirror was silent for a moment, and then said to Qiu Chang's in a serious tone, Don't be afraid of what I'm going to tell you next. Arjun, don't worry. Qiu Chang's said seriously, I have received professional training. No matter how terrible that thing is, I will not be afraid, unless I can't help it. What professional training? Forget it. Kunlun Mirror quickly told him everything that happened before. Qiu Chang's listened in silence and said, So, time went backwards. I suspect that the mirror on the Yochai mirror stand is actually a fragment of my body. The mirror sighed and said, so it has the ability to reverse time and space. Fragments. Ah Jin, when did you die? Yochai time said in surprise. After I went down to the mortal world from the West Queen Mother's palace. The mirror said lightly, my body was broken, it turned into many fragments, scattered everywhere, and only the spirit of the instrument remained. My condolences. I will have a chance in the future to see if I can help you find the fragments and reunite the broken mirror. Yochai was chatting with the mirror. Junior Sister Zhu next to him looked for a while and recognized that the golden armor warrior was a follower of the divine fighter, so everyone planned to return to the cave and leave the secret realm. Zhu Yingyan was about to leave with him, but found that his senior brother was standing still, so he turned around and looked at him in confusion. Yochai took Junior Sister and walked a few steps to the edge of the cloud platform. Not long after, the golden armored warrior suddenly opened his eyes and walked into the cave with a knife in hand. Yochai immediately pulled his junior sister and rushed onto the iron chain bridge and ran all the way to the Yuntai on the other side. As soon as they got on the Yuntai, they heard the sound of immortal music, as if it was right beside their ears. The music this time is louder than last time. The mirror suddenly said. Maybe it's hinting that time has gone back once. Yochai pondered and said, when the music gets louder and louder, does it mean that the secret realm is undergoing some kind of change? And it's definitely a bad change. The mirror said seriously, this is not the secret realm of the sect, and it may not welcome outsiders like you to enter. That's right. Yochai agreed, looking vigilantly at Yochai from afar, and suddenly said, by the way, Arjing. Do you think if I go to Yochai to pick golden lotus seeds again, can I eat them a second time? The mirror. It should be possible. It said hesitantly. After time goes back, can the effect of the lotus seeds eaten last time be preserved? Yochai asked cautiously. The time reversal here is not time going back. The mirror replied, but it will send your and your sister's bodies to the past, and use the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons to give you mental hints, so that you can't remember what happened before. For example, if your sister dies next, then after time reversal, all you see is her phantom, just like the two Kunlun disciples just now. After all, it's easy to travel through the physical body, but the cause and effect of making the dead alive is too great, even I can't do it, let alone a fragment of my body. The two people just now were illusions. Yochai understood and sighed. Jing and Tu invited him to help because they trusted him, but they didn't expect to be killed, it was helpless. He mourned in silence for a few seconds, then pulled out a sword light and rolled up the shriveled lotus pod in the Yochai into his hand. Zhu Yingyan was startled, and when he saw that there was no formation triggering the Yochai, he slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Yochai peeled the lotus pod open, and sure enough, he peeled out 2 more lotus seeds from it. This is strange, doesn't that mean that the lotus seeds can be swiped repeatedly? Jing. He couldn't help asking, I remember you once said that history that has already happened cannot be changed. Yes. Jing sighed and said, so this is false history. What do you mean by false history? Yochai asked in surprise. The mirror was silent for a moment, then said, you were walking on the road, and suddenly you met your future self, who gave you a lotus seed. In order to ensure that history is not changed, you traveled through time back to yesterday the next day and gave the lotus seed you had previously obtained to your past self. So, where did this lotus seed, which is sent back to yesterday every other day, come from? The answer is, this lotus seed comes from false history, which is a temporary thread that is not on the main line of time created by the avenue of time to ensure a linear loop. Yochai was silent for a moment, then said, Jin, can you speak human language? Oh, I forgot that you are not Luoyang now, and you don't have the bonus of comprehension. The mirror said with a smile, this is very complicated to explain. First of all, you have to know that time is a ray with a starting point but no end point, okay, stop. Yochai sighed and said, anyway, this lotus seed can be eaten, right? Yes. Can it be infinitely swiped? No. The mirror said, even my fragments cannot create an infinite number of time threads, and will be backfired by the avenue of time. I see. Yochai ate a lotus seed and stuffed another one to Zhu Yingyan. Be careful not to choke. Zhu Yingyan. What is this? Yochai golden lotus seeds, taking them can improve the efficiency of breathing and refining ki. Zhu Yingyan was slightly startled when he heard this, and quickly ate the lotus seeds, and then looked at the other remaining lotus pods. Don't look at it, there's nothing inside. Qiu Changtime said this, and suddenly pinched the sword formula with his hand, and the jade dragon sword turned into a beam of light and rolled directly towards the mirror on the Yochai mirror stand. The vision suddenly brightened. Qiu Changtime walked out of the cave and looked at the golden armor warrior guarding the bridge. Just as he was about to speak in a low voice, he suddenly heard Kunlun Mirror say helplessly, "Let me show you a short video." Qiu Changtime watched the video in surprise, and the corner of his eye twitched. "So I have been reincarnated twice?" "Yes," Kunlun Mirror said. "And I don't know why I got caught. I don't know. For now, it seems best to avoid approaching my body fragments, the mirror. That is to say." Qiu Changtime thought, considering that there is a high possibility of backtracking this time, even if I kiss junior sister Zhu now, she won't remember it after the backtracking. Indeed. Kunlun Mirror said numbly, as long as you can survive until the third backtracking after kissing her. After imagining a little bit, being chased by Zhu Yingyan holding a sword on the long iron chain bridge, Qiu Changtime shook his head violently and threw some unrealistic thoughts out of his mind. I'm a gentleman, how can I do such a thing? Chapter 103 Weird Mechanism, Phantom Rebirth. To be honest, Qiu Changtime really had no memory of the previous time travels. But he knew very well that the illusion of Mirror Flower and Water Moon was powerful. Qiu Changtime and Luo Yan had the same facial features, but from the head of Ziwei sect, the elder Shi Din, to Zhu Yingyan and Shi Luli, none of them could be recognized. It was simply an illusion that was unique in the world. After the time travel, it should not be difficult for me to detect any sense of disobedience. But, speaking of which, Jing. Qiu Changtime sighed, you are also a spirit weapon, don't you have any way to deal with the original body? I don't master the power of time, I just borrow the avenue of time. Kunlun Mirror said helplessly, it's mainly because your rank is too low. How can a cultivator of the Foundation establishment stage resist an innate spiritual treasure? Qiu Changtime was so angry that he laughed. It seems that you didn't die a good death, and your body was used to deal with me, or is it because my cultivation level is not enough? That's not what I wanted to do. Kunlun Mirror became more and more embarrassed, and said aggrievedly, after all, I'm just a mirror. If I didn't live in your sea of consciousness, I couldn't even move freely. That's too bad, Jing. Have some shame. Have some shame. Kunlun Mirror quickly perfunctorily said, listen to me, try to bypass the Yochai this time and don't go to the mirror stand. Yeah. Qiu Changtime nodded. According to the strategy steps recorded in the Kunlun Mirror, after the Golden Armor Warrior was alarmed by the two people inside, Qiu Changtime took Zhu Yingyan to rush onto the iron chain bridge and ran straight to the cloud platform opposite. The fairy music is louder this time. Kunlun Mirror reminded. Yeah. Qiu Changtime nodded, and then pulled Zhu Yingyan around Yochai and walked towards the direction of the palace. Zhu Yingyan didn't understand why, and wanted to explore around, but when she saw that her senior brother pulled her away without saying anything, she felt a little shy and uneasy, and didn't resist. The two of them bypassed Yochai from a distance, walked through the arcade on the edge of the cloud platform, and crossed the towering Tianmen, and came to the front of the palace. The palace of the Queen Mother of the West is called Zhao Palace. The so-called Zhao means to shine brightly. From the outside, it is worthy at being a fairy palace, with dragons on the pillars and phoenixes on the eaves, and it is extremely brilliant and splendid. Going up the steps, the two stood in front of the closed palace gate. The palace gate is about 3 feet high, tightly closed, and extremely heavy. After confirming that there were no traps, Qiu Changtime pushed the door hard. Seeing that he was struggling, Zhu Yingyan stepped forward to help. The two of them used their shoulders to support the palace door, and finally pushed the palace door open with a low shout. The huge main hall inside was full of stands and tables. Countless magical weapons, flying swords, Taoist books, and elixirs with colorful lights and rising spiritual energy were neatly placed on the stands and tables, almost blinding the two people's eyes. Zhu Yingyan took a deep breath, and his 7 orifice exquisite heart started to work, so he suppressed the greed in his heart, turned around and asked Qiu Changtime, what should I do? Qiu Changtime was silent for a moment, and after confirming that there were no traps or restrictions inside through the Kunlun Mirror, he nodded to Zhu Yingyan. The two stepped into the palace gate at the same time. The sight suddenly brightened. Qiu Changtime's eyes swept across the sea of clouds and looked at the golden armored warriors guarding the bridge. Suddenly, the small movie played at an accelerated speed by the Kunlun mirror flashed in his sight. This. Kyo Chang Time had a headache after reading it. How many times have I gone back in time? The 4th time. Kunlun mirror replied. Kyo Chang Time thought quickly. The 1st time, staring at the mirror table, going back in time. The 2nd time, trying to take away the Kunlun mirror fragment, going back in time. The 3rd time, bypassing Ochai and trying to enter Jogan, going back in time. Combining the only evidence, it seems that the Kunlun mirror fragment is guarding the Yuntai. Once it feels threatened, or tries to leave Yuntai and enter Jogan, it will trigger the counterattack mechanism of the Kunlun mirror fragment. It is also very simple to confirm this conjecture. Take junior sisters Yu to wander around Yuntai, neither try to enter Jogan nor investigate the central Yochai. If the same amount of time has passed and still does not trigger the time reversal, it can probably prove this point. So Kyo Chang Time did the same thing again. After the golden armor warrior was hooked away, he dragged Zhu Yingyan to the iron chain bridge without saying anything. Although Zhu Yingyan always liked to compete with her senior brother, she still recognized his ability and determination in her heart. Kyo Chang Time was too lazy to explain, so she didn't ask any more questions. She just followed Kyo Chang Time closely, thinking silently with a tense expression, what was the deep meaning of her senior brother's move. When they arrived at the Yuntai, they heard the sound of immortals singing, as if they were just around the corner. It was louder than the previous few times they retraced their steps. Not only that, the stone pillars of the arcade surrounding the edge of the Yuntai also began to appear one after another. Although the outline was very faint and flickering, it was vaguely recognizable that there were countless golden armored warriors standing around. But the eyes revealed on the mask were cold and dead, not like ordinary people. There were also fairies coming and going, holding the paper and half cover in their faces, singing beautiful music with jade throats. Between the twists and turns of her eyes, there was a frequent flash of resentment. Kyo Chang Time looked serious, knowing that if he went back a few more times, these golden armored warriors and fairies would become reality, and there was a high probability that they would attack the two of them. This time reversal mechanism must be cracked as soon as possible. He ignored the phantoms and just took his junior sister to circle along the edge of the cloud platform. After circling for about 10 times, Zhu Yingyan finally couldn't hold it anymore and frowned and asked, "Brother, what are you looking for?" "Oh, I'm studying the formation," Kyo Chang Time said. "Formation?" Zhu Yingyan was surprised. "Are these phantoms caused by the formation? Moreover, senior brother actually knows about formations." "Wait, I remember that when senior brother went out for training before, he helped the monks of Yu King Temple to crack the formation." Damn, senior brother not only has a high level of cultivation, powerful Taoism, and proficient swordsmanship, but now he has even started to dabble in formations. When can I catch up with senior brother? Thinking of this, junior sisters Yu saw Kyo Chang Time looking at her strangely. Invincible character, synchronization value +1. What's wrong? Zhu Yingyan suppressed his reluctance and asked again. "Don't talk first." Kyo Chang Time frowned and said, "I'm thinking about something." He has been calculating the time since he arrived at the Yuntai. So far, it has been almost 3 times longer than the previous retracing processes, and the retracing process has not been triggered, which can explain the problem. Kyo Chang Time asked Zhu Yingyan to stand on the side of the arcade again, and then carefully approach the Ochai. He did not look at the mirror stand in the middle of the pool, but just manipulated the sword light to cut off the dry lotus pod. Then he turned around and gave half of the 2 peeled lotus seeds to Zhu Yingyan, saying, "Eat it." Zhu Yingyan wanted to say something but stopped. Seeing Kyo Chang Time chewed and swallowed it without hesitation, he also put the lotus seeds into his mouth. Kyo Chang Time finished eating the lotus seeds and turned his back to Yochai to think. Well, the retracing process still did not trigger. The triggering mechanism is basically clear. Once you try to break into the Jia Palace, or make the Kunlun mirror fragments on the mirror stand feel threatened, it will trigger the retracing mechanism. In other words, we can only launch a sneak attack when it is not paying attention. Thinking of this, Kyo Chang Time suddenly turned around, and the Xiandu thunder flew out from his sleeves, striking at the Ochai mirror platform like lightning. Kyo Chang Time walked out of the cave, and his vision suddenly became clear. In the distance was an endless sea of clouds, and in the near distance was the iron chain bridge and the bridge guarding God, as well as the short movie played by the Kunlun mirror. After listening to the Kunlun mirror's explanation in amazement, Kyo Chang Time, who knew that he had failed 4 times, began to ponder silently again. Chapter 104 Junior Sisters Inspiration, Xiandu Divine Thunder. It seems that the method of suddenly attacking the Kunlun Mirror fragment while it is not paying attention is not feasible. Xiandu Thunder is already the fastest attack method in Qiu Chang's hands, comparable to the 5 elements Divine Light. If Xiandu Thunder cannot work, it proves that conventional means can do nothing to the Kunlun Mirror fragment. Rushing to the long iron chain bridge with his junior sister, Qiu Chang's did not run at full speed this time, but just walked quickly. His steps were heavy, his expression was serious, his brows were almost tangled, and he was thinking hard about how to break the situation. Zhu Yingyan had never seen such a senior brother. In her impression, Qiu Chang's always had a gentle expression and was calm. Even when facing a hostile cultivator who was 1 level higher, he could confidently shout evil cannot defeat good. This was the first time she saw Qiu Chang's frowning and thinking like he was facing a great enemy. Kunlun Mirror. The synchronization value of the invincible character was about to drop, but it did not take Qiu Chang's time, but just silently withdrew the character illusion. As long as the character setting is not maintained, there will be no problem with the synchronization value, just like there is no need to add firewood when the boiler is turned off. It is very reasonable. The aura of the King of Force dissipated, and Zhu Yingyan immediately felt a sense of intimacy. She actually didn't hate her senior brother, and even had some faint admiration for him. It was just because her personality was too strong and she was always provoked by the aura of the King of Force. Therefore, when she was with her senior brother, she always maintained a tense and aggressive attitude to win. Now that she didn't feel like she had a lump in her throat, Zhu Yingyan relaxed and asked in confusion. Why do you have such an expression, senior brother? Is there any problem with this secret realm? You won't understand even if I tell you. Qiu Chang's said perfunctorily. If the aura was still there, this sentence would make Zhu Yingyan explode. But after all, he had lost his aura. Zhu Yingyan noticed that he was upset, so she gently held his hand and said softly, I don't understand what you're worried about, because you have never told me. Why can't you tell me the problem? Or do you think I am too stupid to help you? Qiu Chang's looked at her impatiently. Zhu Yingyan responded with a beautiful smile. Qiu Chang's sighed and said, Junior sister, do you believe that we are experiencing time travel? He did not mention the Kunlun Mirror, but just talked about the time travel in general, and pointed out lightly that this mechanism seems to be related to the Yochai mirror in the center of the cloud platform. Zhu Yingyan was silent after listening. After the two walked across the long cableway bridge and stepped onto the cloud platform, looking at the semi-solidified phantoms around them and the loud music of the immortals around them, Zhu Yingyan confirmed that what his brother said was not a joke. In other words, he and his senior brother did go back in time at least once, which can explain why his senior brother could foresee the future and describe the scene here in advance. It's amazing, she murmured, looking at the phantoms of the golden armored warriors standing around. For some reason, Zhu Yingyan suddenly had an illusion that these gods seemed to be spying on her maliciously, but they couldn't attack the two because of the restrictions of the secret realm. According to my senior brother, the core of this time reversal is the mirror in the center of Yochai. Zhu Yingyan said. Yeah. Qiu Chang's responded absent-mindedly. Since my senior brother has tried and can't get close to the Kunlun mirror head-on, have you tried to go around from the side? Zhu Yingyan analyzed seriously. Qiu Chang's thought to himself, isn't this what I'm thinking about? Suddenly, he noticed the delicate profile of his junior sister. Her serious look of thinking hard and racking her brains was completely different from her usual cold and reserved expression. Instead, she had a different kind of cuteness. Well, anyway, the countdown of the secret realm is based on the number of times of backtracking, not the length of stay, so it doesn't matter if you let junior sister think for a while longer. So Qiu Chang's stared at junior sister's profile, until Zhu Yingyan suddenly had an idea and said, Brother, look at the edge of Yochai, is there a golden armored warrior standing there? Yes. Qiu Chang's also seemed to be aware of it, but there seemed to be a layer of film between them, and he couldn't figure it out clearly. Then what? What does this mean? The golden armored warrior can get close to Yochai. Zhu Yingyan said in a deep voice. These words were like lightning in the night, awakening the deaf and immediately breaking Qiu Chang's fixed mindset. He would feel threatened by the mirror fragment, but the golden armored warrior would not. If he could pretend to be the golden armored warrior, plus the illusion of the mirror flowers and water moon that Arjun gave him, could he deceive the fragment? Of course. Kunlun Mirror said excitedly in the sea of consciousness, why didn't I think of it? Junior sisters, you is really smart. Have you ever recorded the golden armored warrior? Kyo Chang's Time asked calmly. No. Kumla Mirror laughed, but isn't there one over the Iron Chain Bridge? Kyo Chang's Time suddenly realized it. In this way, the elements of success are gathered. Junior sister. Kyo Chang's Time said calmly, let's go back to the Iron Chain Bridge. Yes. Hearing that his senior brother said to go back to the bridge, Zhu Yingyan immediately realized that Kyo Chang's Time wanted to kill the bridge guarding the bridgehead and use its equipment to disguise as a golden armor warrior to get close to the Chai mirror platform. Although I don't know if it will work, it seems that there is no other way at present. The two returned to the Iron Chain Bridge again. There were vast seas of clouds on both sides, and the wind was blowing the bridge surface slightly. Zhu Yingyan was a little shy. She remembered that her senior brother had held her hand and ran all the way from the entrance of the secret realm to the cloud platform. That warm feeling, now there seems to be some residual warmth in the palm of her hand. In addition, according to what her senior brother said, time has been retraced 4 times, which means that her senior brother has held her hand 4 times. Thinking of this, she was a little confused. Zhu Yingyan quickly activated the 7-aperture delicate heart to suppress these charming thoughts. However, considering that time travel will erase my memory, whether my senior brother has done more daring things before, such as kissing, thinking of this, I couldn't stay calm. Zhu Yingyan quickly activated the 7-aperture delicate heart with all her strength to suppress these shy thoughts. Kyo Chang's Time didn't know how many messy thoughts this junior sister had filtered out in a short period of time. He just walked forward cautiously until the cliff platform in the distance was vaguely visible. Then, the bridge guard on the platform suddenly moved. Junior sister. Over me. Kyo Chang's Time reminded, and the jade dragon sword in his hand shot out. Floating 9 mornings, shining thousands of feet. Zhu Yingyan immediately chanted a spell, spewing a large amount of flames from her mouth and nose, and quickly rushed forward along the Iron Chain Bridge. In order to avoid burning the long bridge, she deliberately controlled the intensity of the flames and only created a large area of light and thick smoke. In the flames, the figure of the golden armor god rushed out suddenly, waving the long sword in the air, and repelled the jade dragon sword that stabbed in the air. The next second, the red and black Xiandu thunder was like a long snake, hitting the chest of the golden armor god directly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 105. Collected fragments and enter our palace. The golden armor warrior, with armor all over his body, is not only difficult to be injured by mortal swords and spears, but also difficult to be broken by the flying swords of immortals. The reason is simple. His armor is made of the wool of the mortal world, and the faith of millions of people gather together, so he naturally has strange magical powers. However, Xiandu Thunder is known as the Jade Emperor's Might, which has a natural restraining effect on this kind of will, and its lethality is up to 3 times that of ordinary thunder. A thunder method hit the golden armor warrior, and immediately made a huge crack on the bright mirror on his chest. Countless black smoke overflowed from it, like blood gushing out, but the god general was unaware of it, just striding forward and rushing towards the 2 people, with the long sword in his hand already dragged behind him. Zhu Yingyan pulled Kyo Chang's Time back in a hurry, and the Ujie sword in his hand also shot out in a hurry, but was split again by the golden armor god general. At the moment of metal and iron clashing, another Xiandu thunder accurately hit the crack in the god general's chest, penetrated directly, and then exploded from the inside. The lower body of the god general Hercules was still charging forward, but his upper body was broken at the waist and flew backwards. Soon, the golden armor, helmet and longsword fell on the long bridge. The flesh filled with willpower was just right by the Xiandu thunder that controlled the power and annihilated it. Kyo Chang's Time's jade dragon sword rolled over and rolled the equipment to his side. At the same time, he asked Kumla Mirror in his heart, "How is it?" "It's recorded." Kumla Mirror replied, "When the willpower overflowed, I captured it and recorded it." "Okay." Kyo Chang's Time tried to put on the armor. Zhu Yingyan helped by the side, tying the straps and waist belt for the senior brother, and then circled around him a few times, looking up and down. Except for the cracks on the chest of the armor, there is no flaw. Finally, she concluded, "You can try it." "Well." Kyo Chang's Time pulled up the armor and walked towards the direction of the cloud platform. The Kunlun mirror also began to change the illusion of flowers in the mirror and moon in the water. As for the character of the template of the Golden Armor Warrior, it was persistence. The so-called willpower is essentially great persistence. The more pious the people pray, the more firm their beliefs are, and the purer the willpower they contribute. At this time, Qiu Chang's Time had already abandoned all distracting thoughts, but kept the firm idea of leaving the secret realm, and struggled forward along the long iron chain bridge. As the synchronization value rose rapidly, Zhu Yinlian, who fell behind, also keenly noticed that the aura of his senior brother began to change again. It's just that it has changed before, and she has long been accustomed to it. Qiu Chang's Time kept silent, strode forward, and finally crossed the long iron chain bridge and stepped onto the Yuntai jade brick. Sure enough, with the help of the Kunlun mirror's illusion of flowers in the mirror and moon in the water, after putting on the skin of the Golden Armor Warrior, the surrounding phantoms, whether they were golden armor gods or dancing girls, no longer focused on him. The malicious intent that had been there and not there, as if it was spying on him, had also disappeared without a trace. Qiu Chang's Time did not think about anything else, but just walked straight to the Yochai mirror stand and reached out to take the mirror on it. The light on the surface of the mirror was slightly flowing, as if it wanted to start the time reversal, but in the end it did not start. Its body was just a fragment that had lost its spirit, collected by the divine fire Dao and used as the defense restriction core outside the secret realm, and infused with a low-level consciousness composed as willpower, ordering it to beware of and block any strangers outside the secret realm. As for the divine fire Dao monks, golden armor warriors, and dancing girls playing music within the sect, they were naturally not within the scope of needing to be guarded against and blocked. With the help of the character illusion of the Golden Armor Warrior, Qiu Chang's Time finally avoided the risk of time reversal and directly took the mirror off the mirror stand. The next second, the fragment merged into his body, but it was RG in the sea of consciousness who began to work, allowing the spirit of the weapon and the body fragment to reunite with the mysterious connection. Oh. After the fusion was completed, Arjun cried out half distressed and half annoyed, "Why did you use up so much spiritual power?" "Serious spiritual power consumption?" Qiu Chang's Time asked. "Yes, after all, nearly 10,000 years have passed, it's not a matter of time." Kunlun Jing said with tears in his eyes, "The big head was used up just now and I activated several time reversals." Qiu Chang's Time. "Indeed, I took junior sisters Yu to brush the Ochai Golden Lotus seeds several times. It seems that they were all produced by the Kunlun mirror fragments consuming the spiritual energy reserves. As the mirror on the mirror table was taken down by senior brother, it disappeared strangely and abruptly, and the phantoms around it also disappeared, and the fairy music in the air also subsided." Seeing Qiu Chang's Time start to take off his armor, Zhu Yinlian breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. "Is this considered a crack?" "Yeah." Qiu Chang's Time nodded slightly, harvested the shriveled lotus pods from the Ochai, and peeled out 2 golden lotus seeds. Anyway, in order to create some false history, the fragments of Arjing spent their spiritual energy to transform the golden lotus seeds from the looping time and space, so it would be a waste if they didn't eat them. After giving a lotus seed to junior sisters Yu, Qiu Chang's Time said concisely, "Eat it, it can increase the speed of ki refining." Zhu Yinlian was stunned for a long time, and when she saw Qiu Chang's Time eat it directly, she followed him and put it into her mouth with doubt. After taking the Ochai Golden Lotus, the two of them passed through the heavenly gate and walked towards the Jia Palace of the Queen Mother of the West. Just like the last time, they pushed open the door of the Jia Palace with great effort, and they saw a dazzling array of magic weapons, flying swords, Taoist books, elixirs, all placed on the platform, ready for you to choose. Even though Zhu Yinlian has always been cold and reserved, she couldn't help showing a happy expression at this time, but she didn't rush to cross the door and just looked at her senior brother eagerly. Qiu Chang's Time pondered for a moment, and heard the Kunlun mirror in his sea of consciousness say, "I have absorbed the knowledge and intelligence from the fragments of the main body. Although this place was built in imitation of the palace of the Queen Mother of the West, it is a secret realm specially designed by the divine fire Dao to train the combat capabilities of the Golden Core true person." Qiu Chang's Time understood. Unlike the Li Palace, as a pure combat training secret realm, it is no wonder that there are hostile creatures such as the Golden Armor Warrior. The ancient divine fire Dao emphasizes collecting willpower and becoming a god by sitting. As a result, the Jin and Shenron of the sect are greedy for tranquility, have cultivation but are not good at fighting. Therefore, the divine fire Dao is in the secret realm, inside the Jia Palace, which is the room in front of you. A total of 13 training levels are designed, called Southern Yuan Divine Fire 13 Light levels. The strength of the divine soldiers and generals at each level will change with the level of cultivation of the trainees, ranging from the Jin and Realm Shinkyu level to the Oi level. After the trial taker completes the challenge and returns to the starting point, that is, the room you're in now, you can choose the reward based on the number of kills. In addition, since you killed the golden armor warrior of the entrance of the secret realm, and the other party's cultivation is equivalent to the Jin and Realm Shinkyu level, this time it is counted as killing the first golden armor general. There is no need to challenge the subsequent levels, and you can directly choose the reward. Note that according to the restrictions of the Jia Palace, each of you should only be able to choose one reward. After listening to Kumlin Jing's story, Qiu Changtai understood. The secret realm of the Queen Mother of the West Palace was designed by the Divine Fire Dao specifically for Jin and level cultivators. It is similar to a combat training secret realm in that palace. The training level is located in the Dao Palace, in the room inside the main hall, and the corresponding level breaking rewards are also set. As for me and my junior sister, what we cracked at the cloud platform just now is just the firewall of this secret realm to prevent outsiders from entering. Thinking of this, he became a little uninterested and did not intend to challenge the Shangjuan 13 levels inside. In order to defeat the Jin and level golden armor warrior just now, the Xiandu thunder that restrained the willpower was certainly important, but the more important thing was that the combat environment was on a narrow iron chain bridge, and it was difficult for the opponent to move and avoid attacks. If it were another wide environment, with the opponent's terrifying sprint speed within 100 meters, I might not have time to release the thunder method. First, I will choose the rewards with my junior sister, and then leave this secret realm. Chapter 106. Mysterious Cone, to Yuan Linjin. Thanks to Alliance leader Biku Jian for the extra chapter. Qiu Changtai told his junior sister about the analysis of the Kunlun mirror as a guess. Zhu Yingyan was also a little surprised. The cloud platform is the defensive mechanism of the secret realm, responsible for identifying the identity of the trial. This also explains why the bridge guard did not launch an attack at the beginning. He should be waiting for the visitor to reveal his identity. Zhao Palace is the trial level of the secret realm. It is also very simple to verify this. Just go in and take a look. It was just 4 consecutive time rewinds. Although Zhu Yingyan didn't notice anything, he also saw that his senior brother was exhausted, so he naturally didn't urge him to go in to verify. However, his senior brother guessed that the treasures displayed in this main hall were rewards given to trial participants based on the number of golden armor warriors killed. There seems to be nothing wrong with this reasoning. If this is true, then we can only take one each, not all, otherwise it would be unreasonable. Thinking of this, Zhu Yingyan looked at the treasures. She has the family heirloom Yujia, so she has no shortage of flying swords. She also has the great light fire, so she has no shortage of Taoism. Therefore, she only cast her eyes on magic weapons and elixirs. 10th rank magic weapons are naturally valuable now, but they were common in ancient times. At the time, whether it was flying swords or magic weapons, there was no such thing as a few ranks. There was no magic weapon below the 10th rank. There was a small jade slip next to each magic weapon. Zhu Yingyan penetrated her spiritual sense into it, and the corresponding magic weapon introduction was displayed. In just a few words, the name and effect were explained clearly. Perhaps because the two of them only killed a golden armor warrior and barely reached the passing line of the trial level, most of these magic weapons were of the lower grade of the 10th rank, and Zhu Yingyan didn't like them at all. So she turned her attention to the elixir. Various elixirs were placed in elixir bottles of different shapes, and there was still a jade slip introduction next to them. When her spiritual sense swept over them, she frowned. It was not that the quality was too bad, but that the grade was too high. Although they were ordinary elixirs, most of them were used by the golden elixir realm, and she and her senior brother couldn't use them at all. After searching for a long time, Zhu Yingyan finally found a small bottle at the bottom of the shelf. According to the jade slip, it contained 1/3 of a spoonful of golden mercury elixir. After the cultivators of the waffle level took it, they could warm up the Danton, perfect the purple palace, and improve the final elixir grade. The last 8 words made Zhu Yingyan's pupils tremble slightly. She certainly knew what elixir grade meant. In normal times, she could give up any magic weapon or flying sword, but she had to get the golden mercury elixir. But Zhu Yingyan knew that the reason why she could receive the reward here was mainly due to the contribution of her senior brother, and she was at best just an idea. So she pointed to the small bottle below and said in a clear voice, "Senior brother, come and see, what is this?" Qiu Changtai was wandering in the Taoist area, looking for a copy of the 5 Thunders Orthodox Law. When he heard Zhu Yingyan calling his name, he went over to scan it with his spiritual sense, and laughed in surprise. It's golden mercury elixir. Although the quantity is less, it is also suitable for junior sister. Senior brother, don't you want it? Zhu Yingyan asked in a low voice. Since you found it first, you can take it. Qiu Changtime didn't care. In terms of this contribution, senior brother is the greatest. Zhu Yingyan said seriously, if senior brother wants it, give it to senior brother. No need. Qiu Changtime was a little touched, and said seriously, junior sister, don't worry about me. But, or do you think that senior brother will fall behind junior sister in terms of cultivation realm if he loses this golden mercury dano liquid? Qiu Changtime smiled gently. Zhu Yingyan stared at him for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. Of course not. Humph, with this golden mercury dano liquid, you can expect to be inferior to me in the dam forming grade. She squatted down gently, stretched out her hand and grasped the bottle. Then her figure disappeared. Qiu Changtime knew that she had chosen the reward and was teleported away from Jia Palace, so he continued to look at other rewards. On the Taoist side, it has been confirmed that there is no Five Thunders orthodox method, which is a bit of a pity. The magic weapons are all ordinary stuff, and Qiu Changtime really doesn't like them at this time. There is no shortage of flying swords. The Jade Dragon Sword can handle most situations. If that doesn't work, there is also that Kingping Sword. It seems that I can only choose the elixir like sisters you. Qiu Changtime suddenly noticed that there was a strange awl under a wooden table somewhere in the magic weapon area. The awl was neither made of iron nor stone, and it was shiny enough to reflect a person. It was 7 inches long and had very sharp edges. What's even more strange is that there was no jade slip description next to it. Qiu Changtime looked carefully and noticed that there were several strange inscriptions shallowly engraved on the surface of the awl, but they were covered by dust and could not be clearly recognized. It seems that I have seen it somewhere, that's right. Aren't there these inscriptions in the middle volume of the Five Thunders Orthodox Law given by Li Gong? Qiu Changtime suddenly remembered that there was a picture on the cover page of the Taoist book of the middle volume of the Five Thunders Orthodox Law that Li Gong sent directly into the Sea of Consciousness. It was just a hammer, a cone, and a few inscriptions. The inscription was an immortal seal, and the meaning was unknown, so he just skipped it. But I didn't expect to see the real thing here. Whether this all is really of great origin, or just a replica of a magic weapon or even an ordinary object, it is probably related to thunder magic. This is it. As soon as Qiu Changtime picked up the awl, he felt dizzy and was teleported to a peach forest by the secret realm. There were many peach trees planted around, the flowers bloomed like waterfalls, the pink petals were like the sea, beautiful, and the fragrance lingered, making people feel like they were in a fairyland, relaxed and happy. Zhu Yingyan was wearing a white robe, with her long hair tied up, and her expression was cold. She stood under the tree and saw that her senior brother was also teleported here, and she immediately showed a relieved smile. Senior brother. She whispered, I have explored the surroundings. There are only peach trees and nowhere else. The implication is that we are trapped here again. Qiu Changtime nodded, and his eyes swept around, and he saw a well in the open space in the forest ahead. I have also explored that well. Zhu Yingyan said immediately, there is water in it, but it is ordinary well water, nothing unusual. Junior sister, have you ever gone down the well to have a look? Qiu Changtime asked. Down the well? Zhu Yingyan was a little stunned. Qiu Changtime took her to the well and looked down. The well water was clear and reflected the faces of the two people. Since there are peach trees all around, the only difference is this well. Qiu Changtime said calmly, and then quietly asked Kunlun Mirror in his Sea of Consciousness, are you sure this is the exit of the secret realm? Kunlun Mirror was silent for a moment before answering. There is indeed a space passage under the well. Of course I know. Zhu Yingyan said uneasily, but this well, junior sister, are you scared? Qiu Changtime used his trump card. What does this have to do with being afraid or not? Zhu Yingyan said angrily, after all, this is an unknown secret place. If you are going to jump when you see a well, then why didn't you jump under the sea of clouds on both sides of the iron chain bridge before? Before he finished speaking, Qiu Changtime pulled out the Jade Dragon Sword, and the sword light wrapped around the two of them, and then rushed directly into the well. Chapter 107. Report to the Master, and record merit in the sect. A flash of sword light broke through the water surface. The two rushed out of the lake, all wet. Zhu Yingyan sneezed and felt that his body suddenly warmed up. It was Qiu Changtime who cast a universal clear sound small light spell. The two looked around, and the sword light hovered for a moment before Zhu Yingyan said uncertainly, "This seems to be Guo's Lake." Guo's Lake, called Guozakyu in the local dialect, is a lake located at the southern foot of the Kunlun Mountains. There is fresh water in the north and salt water in the south, which is very strange. The place where the two came out of the secret realm is exactly the boundary between fresh water and salt water. So after using the small light spell to dry his clothes, Qiu Changtime's body was covered with countless tiny salt crystals, which sparkled in the sun, but Zhu Yingyan was clean all over. Why is my senior brother so unlucky? Seeing through the reason at a glance, Zhu Yingyan couldn't help laughing and dusted the salt grains off Qiu Changtime's clothes. Qiu Changtime didn't say anything, but just stared at her quietly. Soon, Zhu Yingyan also noticed that this action was somewhat ambiguous, and hurriedly put away his hand in embarrassment. At the same time, he summoned the Yujie sword, wrote the sword light and fled to the north, hurriedly leaving a sentence. "Brother, this secret realm is of great importance, we should report it to the master quickly." "Yes." Qiu Changtime nodded slightly, and the Jade Dragon sword light also soared into the sky. The two of them flew the sword one after the other, and soon arrived at the top of Kunlun Tianzhu again and came to Yuxu Palace. Zhu Yingyan arrived at Ziwi's headmaster first, but did not speak, just signaled Qiu Changtime to speak. Qiu Changtime bowed respectfully to the headmaster, and then told how Jing and Du came to find them, how the four entered the secret realm, how the Golden Armor Warrior committed a crime, and how they fell into a strange time replay later. In the end, relying on the wisdom of Sisters Yu, the Golden Armor Warrior was killed, and the Yuntai defense outside the secret realm was successfully cracked, and then went to Zhao Palace to get the reward and leave. The head of Ziwi's sect remained silent, just holding the whisk and listening, with no expression on his face. However, the slightly trembling end of the whisk seemed to indicate that the head of the sect was not as calm as his expression. Finally, when Qiu Changtime talked about the two people escaping from Guo's Lake, the head of Ziwi's sect slowly said, "The Divine Fire sect, about 10,000 years ago, it did occupy the Kunlun Mountains. But later, for some reason, it disappeared from this world. If not, the ancestors of the sect would not have occupied the entire Kunlun Mountains so easily. It is extremely rare that you can survive from the secret realm. But, to ensure that the situation is true, the master has to go with you again." Qiu Changtime agreed immediately. This is of course what should be meant, because if the Queen Mother of the West Palace is really a trial secret realm of the Golden Core Realm, then its importance to the Kunlun Tai King sect is naturally self-evident. Since it had not been explored for nearly 10,000 years, the various treasure resources stored there were so rich that they might even be better than the East Sea Palace. Therefore, it was expected that the head of Ziwi's sect would go there to confirm it personally. Qiu Changtime and Zhu Yingyan flew up on their swords again, and brought the head of Ziwi's sect to the original rock location, only to see that the crack had disappeared long ago. The head of Ziwi's sect squinted at the shallow groove on the ground in front of the crack, and after a moment of silence, he drew out the Qifengguang sword. With just one slash, he split the 100-meter rock and exposed the crack again. The three of them stepped into the crack again, and soon they entered the secret realm again, and came to the cliff platform, with a vast sea of clouds in front of them. The golden armored warrior guarding the bridge also refreshed and stood still at the bridge head. He only heard Ziwi's sect master say, "How did you deal with it? Show me again." Qiu Changtime said yes, and then silently chanted the spell, pinched the Taoist formula, and sent out a Xiandu thunder, which cracked the chest armor of the Golden Armor General. The Golden Armor General immediately opened his eyes wide, his eyes were fierce, and he rushed forward with a knife, but Ziwi's sect master casually pointed at him, and the chi-splitting sword passed by lightly, cutting the opponent in half. It is indeed the power of will. Ziwi's sect master stared at the general for a moment and said, "Golden Dan level, willpower armor, swords and guns can't break, water and fire can't invade. If you didn't have Xiandu thunder, which just happened to restrain it, this trip would be dangerous." The three continued to cross the long bridge and arrived at Yuntai. At this time, there was only an empty mirror stand and lake water in Yuchai, nothing else. Regarding the fragment of Kunlun mirror, Qiu Changtime only said touch it and it will disappear, and Ziwi's sect master did not pursue it too much. He continued to pass through the heavenly gate, and with a whisk, the palace gate opened automatically. In the main hall inside, there were still various treasures on display, dazzling. Ziwi's sect master swept his eyes, and from one of the tables, he rolled up 2 pill bottles with a whisk and threw them to Qiu Chang's-Han and Zhu Yingyan. The two hurriedly caught the pill bottles, and the moment they touched them, they were teleported back to Tuan. Qiu Chang's-Han took out the pill bottle, put it under his nose and smelled it gently. It turned out to be the pure Yuan Qi pill. This is the pure Yuan Qi pill. After all, Zhu Yingyan was born in the Tian and Zhu family, and he quickly recognized it and said in surprise, after taking it, the medicinal power will be refined and penetrated through the limbs and bones, which can shorten the time of marrow washing. Indeed. Qiu Chang's-Han put away the pill bottle calmly. It's a pity that the golden mercury elixir didn't appear again. Zhu Yingyan said regretfully, are we waiting here for Master to return? Master must be confirming the situation in Zhao Palace. I don't know how long it will take. Qiu Chang's-Han thought for a moment and said, even if we have to wait, it's best to wait at the exit outside the secret realm. Yes. Zhu Yingyan had no objection. The two of them rode the sword light and penetrated directly into Tuan Linjin, and then broke out of the water from Guo's lake in the outside world. After waiting by the lake for almost half an hour, the two saw the lake suddenly split into 2 sides. Master Ziwi walked out of it leisurely with a whisk in his hand and came to the two of them. You did a good job this time. Ziwi's head teacher said slowly. Although there was no obvious smile on his face, there was joy in his tone. The faction will give you a great merit once. Let's go, you go back to Kunlun first. Qiu Chang's-Han and Zhu Yingyan nodded in response, and then flew back to Jinlang on the sword. Only the head of Ziwi's sect was left standing silently by the lake, looking at the shimmering lake, with his fingers in his sleeves slightly moving, as if calculating something. Back at the Jinlang cave mansion, Qiu Chang's-Han had just landed on the ground when he heard Zhu Yingyan hesitant to speak, and finally said, well, although it's a little less, I can give you half of it. Qiu Chang's-Han was stunned for a long time before he realized that she was talking about the golden mercury elixir. He frowned slightly and said impatiently, Junior sister, are you looking down on me? Zhu Yingyan was stunned when she heard that. She usually used this to criticize her senior brother, but she didn't expect that her senior brother would fight back in the same way. Her face immediately turned cold and she sneered. Junior sister underestimated you. Well, with your peerless talent, even if you don't need anything else on the road of cultivation, I think you can easily become a first-grade elixir. After that, she turned around and left angrily. When Qiu Chang's-Han couldn't see her, she couldn't help but grit her teeth again and cursed a few words angrily in her heart. Qiu Chang's-Han watched her leave with a faint smile, not taking her ridicule to heart. Of course, he would not covet this little bit of golden mercury elixir, after all, it was Sister Zhu's opportunity. Moreover, with his own ability, how could he lack the opportunity to make an elixir? Chapter 108. Golden silkworm falls into sleep, lily leaves. Qiu Chang's-Han returned to the cave and took a pure vitality pill first. After refining it for a while, he took out the comb magic weapon and played with it carefully. The comb is 7 inches long and weighs about 5 taels. The surface of the material feels smooth and delicate. There is an inscription engraved on one of them, arranged in vertical lines from the bottom to the top of the cone. This is the ancient immortal seal. It is said that each inscription has countless meanings, and different inscriptions can be combined to determine the final meaning. Therefore, since ancient times, the immortal seal can only be interpreted by immortals, but it has never been deciphered by an immortal cultivator. Of course, immortal spirit objects can probably be regarded as a kind of immortal level. A Jing. Qiu Chang's-Han chose to ask for help from an off-site expert again, the immortal spirit object he carried with him. Do you understand the meaning of these inscriptions? This should mean splitting gold and splitting stone. Kumlinjing said uncertainly. Splitting gold and splitting stone. Does it mean to restrain the gold and earth elements? Qiu Chang's-Han pondered. I don't know about that. Kumlin Mirror said reservedly, but, if it has ancient inscriptions, it must be an ancient thing. I see. Qiu Chang's-Han said with a chuckle, it's really better to listen to your words than to speak them. Thank you, Arjing. Kumlin Mirror. After putting away the ore, Qiu Chang's-Han said indifferently, load the file, Luoyan. Kumlin Mirror began to broadcast. Point 3. East China Sea, Pengliu King Temple. Character identity. Luoyan. Mirror Flower Water Moon template overwritten, currently traveling through time and space. Climbing up from the bed, Luoyan went to check the iron tripod in the corner of the room. 3 white and fat gold and silkworms, which were full of poison, were curled up and sleeping soundly at the bottom of the tripod. Gold and silkworms were born to be clean, so Luoyang put them in the tripod and covered it with a lid to ensure that no dust would fall in. Just looking at the bodies of these insects, the golden color still only spread to the first section of the shell, and the color was very light, but it was unknown when it would be fully dyed and mature. According to the records in the classics, the 100 poisons gold and silkworm were successfully cultivated in the late period of the ancient Jirizhao. It is the king of all poisons. If it bites flesh and blood, it will rot in an instant. It is also that king of all insects. Its shell is as tough as gold and iron, as hard as fine steel, and it is difficult to cut with swords and knives. It is not hurt by water or fire. No matter what kind of magic weapon you use, just bite it with a pair of big teeth and it will immediately break and disintegrate. The only pity is that these insects have almost become extinct with the rune of Jirizhao. Even the number in Luoyang's hand is too small, only 3. If you can release tens of thousands of 100 poisons gold and silkworm with a wave of your sleeve like the ancient Jirizhao monks, flapping their wings into clouds, swooping down like rain, and buzzing like thunder. That's called killing gods when seeing gods, killing Buddhas when seeing Buddhas, and destroying heaven and earth. 2 or 3 small insects like this can only be used to snipe and kill evil people. Fortunately, Luoyang specifically checked the classics and confirmed that these 300 poisons gold and silkworm were 1 male and 2 females. If there are resources and opportunities later, let them multiply and become his second trump card after the 5 elements Great Extinction Divine Light. Looking at the 3 gold and silkworms still sleeping, Luoyang has already planned all their futures. Let them shine and burn all the value of being born as insects. Junior brother. Shili rushed in again. Father wants you to come over. Long before she stepped into the door, her impatient voice was transmitted into the room in advance. Luoyang made a prompt decision and skillfully threw the 3 gold and silkworms into the stone tripod, pulled the lid, and pasted the sealing talisman on it. When the formation on the floors opened, the traces were destroyed completely. Okay, he said with a smile. It is not difficult for Luoyang to guess why the elder of the stone tripod is looking for him. With his wisdom, it must be that after hearing about the trip to Tian from Shiluli, he realized that there was something wrong with the identity of Li Qingyang, so he hurried to find him to verify. So when he saw Elder Shidin, Luoyang explained everything in detail. She asked me to repair the formation flags, and I checked all the formation flags. I didn't find any problems, so I came back. Luoyang said honestly, and the reminder of the increase in synchronization value in his sea of consciousness kept appearing, which made Arjun almost numb. I have never seen such a good liar. Under the temperament of hypocritical personality, Elder Shiding did not have any doubts, but just sighed and signaled Luoyang to leave. After Luoyang left, a person came out from behind the screen. It was the master of Pengliu King Temple, Crafty sect. This is strange. Crafty sect said in surprise, people from the heavenly demon sect disguise themselves as cultivators from the cave heaven just to make your disciples run for nothing. Luoyang has a pure heart and should not be lying. Elder Shiding sighed. I don't think your disciple is lying. Master Crafty said solemnly, it's just that this makes the situation even more confusing. Nothing was found missing in the cave heaven. Elder Shiding said in a deep voice, they didn't even know at the time that there was such a Li Qingyang pretending to be a cultivator in the sect. In other words, the other party's plan is not within the cave heaven. Master Crafty sneered, if there is no result, there is no need to care, so as not to fall into the plan of Immortal to make a feint to the east and attack in the west. Well. Elder Shiding stroked his beard, his face still worried. My daughter and Luoyang are at a low level, so they can't get involved in the struggle between New King Temple and Immortal too early. Well, in the next few years, they still have to stay in New King Temple and don't go out. After a few days. What? Another house arrest? She cried out in disbelief. Why? According to the order of Elder Shidin, you are not allowed to enter or leave the sect at will. The white jade puppet guarding the main gate of Yu King Temple was smashed to pieces by Shiluli's divine wit before he could finish his words. Luoyang was speechless at the back, feeling helpless. Having stayed in Yu King Temple for so long, he also knew that this white jade puppet was called Nianmu. As long as you separate your spiritual consciousness and attach it to it, you can move freely like an artificial intelligence robot, which is much more useful than a slave. Because of this, the price of each Nianmu, converted into spiritual stones, is an astronomical figure. She destroyed one casually, which really gave Luoyang a headache. Even if Tiangong Fang, which is known for its wealth, can afford to pay the compensation, it is really not good to destroy things like this. Junior brother, let's go. Shili suddenly shouted, and then she grabbed his hand without saying anything, and rode the sword light into the sky. Behind the two of them, a large number of white jade kites quickly took off and began to hunt down the culprit who destroyed the sect's property. Luo Yan, who was wrapped in the sword light, looked behind with a dull expression, his mind full of messy thoughts such as who am I, where am I, and what should I do? Fortunately, Miss Shi's flying sword was strong enough and soon left the pursuers out of sight. Senior sister. Luo Yan reminded her, we have left the territory of Yu King Temple. Where should we go next? Next. Shili was embarrassed. She originally wanted to go shopping in Fang City, but she was stopped when she slipped out of the sect. Now that she has broken the white jade puppet guarding the gate again, I think her father will be furious when he finds out. If she goes shopping in Fang City again, she might be caught by the senior brother who was ordered to come, and then confined to Tiangong Fang, and she can't even go out. Well, it's decided. Now, let's go out and play for a while, and then go back when we think our father has calmed down. Next, let's explore the various ruins and secret caves in the East China Sea. What do you think, junior brother? Shili thought he had found a suitable reason, and said to Luo Yan in high spirits. Luo Yan almost fell down when he heard it. The last time Qiu Changtian explored the secret realm, it was full of dangers, and he almost got himself and junior sister Xiu in it. It was not easy to get out of the secret realm. Who is willing to accompany Miss Shi to take risks again? Even an iron heart of Taoism can't bear it. No. Of course, you can't say no directly to Miss Shi, because the other party will definitely be angry and embarrassed. You don't let me go, but I have to go. Therefore, Luo Yan pretended to be quite interested and said, Great, senior sister. I've been feeling suffocated in Tiangong Fan recently. Why don't we go to the east first, and then turn to the south to look for an uninhabited island? How about it? Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Okay. Shili didn't know that was the island where Luo Yan practiced the 5 elements divine light last time. It was almost completely plowed by him, and it was impossible for any relics to exist there. Therefore, he just agreed with interest. Chapter 109. Exploring the East China Sea and revisiting the past. Last time, Luo Yan flew eastwards for a long time on his sword in order to find an island to refine the 5 elements' true veins. Shili had never been so deep into the East China Sea. Hearing from his father that the deeper the East China Sea, the more powerful the various water monsters were, he could not help but feel a little expectation and curiosity. In less than a quarter of an hour, the two encountered another attack. The attacker was a giant squid, about 3 feet wide, with a white background and purple lines. It raised its hand and made a few rustling sounds, and then water arrows shot out, attacking the sky with sword light. Shili saw the attack below and just sacrificed the Jade Embarks for defensor, but was hugged by Luo Yan and rolled to the side quickly. Because the appearance of the water arrow was really like the second Taoist method of the Kingping sword after the new rain in the empty mounting, it was afraid that it would have the effect of breaking the defensor. Sure enough, the water arrow treated the Jade Embarks shield as nothing and just penetrated directly without any hindrance. Fortunately, Luo Yan urgently pulled Miss Shi, so that the water arrow did not penetrate her skull, but shot the hairpin on her hair, and her unrestrained long black hair fell down. Realizing that her favorite hairpin was destroyed, Shili was almost furious. She screamed and sacrificed the God Strike Whip, and smashed it down with all her strength. Seeing that the situation was not good, the giant squid swung its body and tried to sink and escape. As a result, the God Strike Whip was faster, directly breaking its 2 tentacles and hitting its head, smashing a huge bloody hole. The giant squid first sank vertically, and then slowly floated up horizontally, obviously dead. Shili then pressed down the sword light and said to Luo Yan, Junior brother, help me find out if there is an inner elixir in its body. Senior sister. Luo Yan said helplessly, only monsters at the transformation stage have inner elixir. The so-called transformation stage is the term used by monsters, that is, the transformation from a beast body to a human body, which corresponds to the golden elixir stage of human cultivators. If the two encountered a transformation monster in the East China Sea, the first thing they would do would be to run for their lives. There would be no other choice. Really? Shili was still a little skeptical, but this squid is so powerful that it can even break the defensor of my Jade Embarks. I think its cultivation level won't be too far behind. That's natural. Luo Yan patiently explained that the squid's innate magical power should have a defense-breaking effect, so it can ignore the defense of the Jade Embarks and blow up the hairpin on Mishy's head. If we really talk about strength, it is almost at the lower middle level of the transformation stage, and is more fragile than cultivators of the same level. Is that so? Shilly was skeptical, but suddenly she had an idea and asked Luo Yan to help dismember the giant squid, get more fish, shrimp, crabs and shellfish, and then find an island nearby for barbecue. After hearing Mishy's request, Luo Yan was simply impressed. What kind of strange brain circuit does it take to change one's mind and kill seafood for a feast when one is planning to explore the uninhabited ruins? But this young lady has always been spoiled. If you go against her to persuade her, she will definitely be in a bad mood. Okay, then I'll find an island first. Luo Yan coaxed her. He pulled out his flying sword, cut the squid into pieces, and put it in the storage bag. Then he took Mishy and followed the previous route, and finally arrived at the island where he originally practiced the 5 elements divine light. As soon as he arrived above the island, Shilly immediately became interested. It was probably because this island had beautiful mountains and waters, lush jungles, and fine sandy beaches, which met the requirements of a seaside resort in all aspects. It was mainly because someone repaired the island after his divine light became great, and harmonized the 5 elements of spiritual energy, which made this place full of vitality. She landed, took off her shoes and socks, and played in the water on the beach. Luo Yan flew to the nearby sea with his sword, quietly used the Taoist method of keeping sword, and caught many fish and shrimps. Then he cut down some trees, set up a grill on the beach, and started to work. Mishy was born in the East China Sea, so she was naturally accustomed to the ocean and beach. It was just her first time to enter an uninhabited island deep in the East China Sea. The unfamiliar environment was a big novel for a while. She got tired at playing for a while, so she came to guard the grill again, poking the fish and shellfish on it with her flying sword, eating one when it was cooked, with oil dripping from her mouth, and dancing with joy. Seeing her showing such a gluttonous expression, Luo Yan also tried to eat some grilled fish. Well, the meat of the sea fish here is indeed more plump and delicate, tender and juicy. I think it is also related to the higher level of the deep sea monsters here, but I don't know what the root cause is. After eating the barbecued seafood, both of them felt full and satisfied. Although the immortal cultivators have already fasted and do not need to eat, occasionally satisfying their appetites is not a loss of worldly pleasure. After refining the turbid air in his stomach, Luo Yan stood up leisurely, thinking that he could finally go back now, right? Then he heard Mishy announce, "This island will belong to me from now on. Junior brother, how about we build a hut here and live here, and practice in seclusion for a few days?" Luo Yan almost vomited blood when he heard this. It would be fine if I left without saying goodbye, but I stayed outside for a few days. When I go back, Elder Shiding will peel my skin off. Sister, this is not good, right? If Master knew, you don't understand this. Shilly said earnestly, if we go back immediately, Father will definitely be furious and hold us responsible for leaving the sect without reason and destroying the sect's property. If we go back after a day, Father will be worried, thinking that as long as we can return safely, all previous mistakes will be written off. If we go back after 2 days, Father will pray in various ways and swear to give us more magic weapons and spiritual tools, just asking us to go back alive. Luo Yan was stunned. Good guy. Is this the legendary Rich raises filial daughters? However, this also shows that Mishy is not a low IQ, at least she has emotional intelligence to understand human nature. The reason why she usually behaves silly is just because she has too few social interactions and is ignorant of worldly affairs. The two of them packed up the barbecue stall. Mishy put on her shoes and socks and planned to take a walk in the woods. Luo Yan naturally had to accompany her. The two walked on the road in the woods, and as they walked, they came to the entrance to the stone chamber where Luo Yan practiced. Junior brother, look. There is a crack in the rock. Mishy shouted in surprise, is there a secret realm inside? If there is a secret realm, I will call Mishy the god of creation. Luo Yan complained in his heart, but said, indeed, looking at the outline of this crack, it doesn't look like it was formed naturally. Maybe there is another cave underneath. Do you think so too? Shilly had an idea, so he raised the god-beating whip and hit it directly at the crack. The passage that was originally blocked by the collapse of the rock wall due to Luo Yan's divine light was quickly cleared. There are indeed ruins. Mishy finally saw the artificial stone steps at the bottom of the passage, and immediately became excited, clapping her hands and laughing. If I am right, there must be an immortal living here. Luo Yan. There is no immortal, but there is a dead great man. Just as he was about to find an excuse to refuse, Shilly grabbed his hand without saying anything and dragged him into the crevice. Chapter 110. 100,000 gods and demons attack Penglai. Shilly cleaned up all the way and soon arrived at the original stone chamber. Above the stone chamber, the cracks that were struck by lightning were clearly visible, casting a large area of clear skylight. There were also clear springs dripping along the cracks, like a bead curtain. There were also green vines hanging along the water curtain, like a screen. In the center of the stone chamber, there was a stone bed, which was the place where Wanfesnram of Jirijao sat and passed away, but it had been charred by lightning. It was surrounded by stagnant water, and there were several star lotuses dotted on it. The lotus leaves moved slightly, and the petals were beautiful, which made Shilly like it very much. This must be the cave where the immortal lived, she said with certainty. Her expression was extremely serious and solemn. The immortal has gone, and this place will be my cave from now on. What else could Luoyan say? He could only say yes repeatedly. Junior brother, help me set up a formation outside to cover it up, so that the passing monks will not find it, Shilly ordered. Luoyan wanted to say that there would be no monks passing by in the depths of the East China Sea. But seeing that Mishu was so happy, he smiled and shook his head, and left to set up the formation. He simply set up a few illusion formations outside, and then nested them with each other, and acted a deep iteration. Perfect. Studying the formation at the entrance of the Wazi Island ruins gave Luoyan a lot of experience, especially how to nest two formations. No one knows formations better than me. No one. After the formation was set up, Luoyan was admiring his masterpiece when he suddenly heard the Kunlun mirror in his sea of consciousness say in panic, "The fragment of the heaven-building stone from Yu King Temple had just left Penglai Island." What? Luoyan was also shocked when he heard this, but soon calmed down again. What is the direction of movement? South. Can you be more specific, Ajin? We are now 18,000 miles away from Yu King Temple. How can you ask me to be specific? I can sense the movement of the other party, which is already amazing. Okay, my Jin is the best. Don't praise me so much. Anyway, you'd better go back to Yu King Temple and find out who left Penglai Island recently. Of course, but what about Mishi? Don't worry about it, go back first. Kunlun mirror urged, it's rare that the other party has moved. If we don't confirm her identity now, it will be impossible when she returns. Luoyan was silent for a long time, and finally said, No, Ajing. I can't just leave Mishi here. She's so stupid. What if something happens to her alone outside? Kunlun mirror. If you say this guy has a mean character, it doesn't seem that mean. At least he knows that he came out with Shiluli, so he has to be responsible for her. But if you say this guy is affectionate and righteous, it doesn't seem to be the case. She is so stupid, dare to say this in front of Mishi. Well, take her back quickly. Kunlun mirror could only compromise and said anxiously. Luoyan turned around and was about to leave, and suddenly saw two sword lights landing on the open space in front of the rock crevice. They were a man and a woman, two strange monks. There is no one here, you can talk, the male monk said. The female monk was still worried and just scanned the surroundings with her spiritual sense. Luoyan immediately shrank into the crevice. Fortunately, among the several nested formations he arranged, there was one that was specifically used to shield the spiritual sense, so he was not exposed in the female monk's spiritual sense scan. After confirming that there was no one, the female monk said, Have you heard that 100,000 gods and demons attacked Penglai? Luoyan, who was eavesdropping. I don't know. The male cultivator sneered, but it sounds very interesting. Iron Fantaoist, we know that you have a grudge against Yu King Temple, so we want to bring you in. The female cultivator said coldly, if you keep acting crazy, I won't have to talk to you. Don't worry, Madam Liu. Iron Fantaoist said quickly, in fact, although no one has told me about this, I have also noticed it recently. Let's not mention anything else. Just say that you, Madam Liu, have visited all the sects that have conflicts with Yu King Temple. Even the most dull cultivator can see the clues from it, right? Nonsense. Madam Liu sneered, which sect in the East China Sea has not had conflicts with Yu King Temple? Penglai Yu King Temple claims to be the direct descendant of the sect, and has always acted domineeringly and recklessly. Everything produced in the East China Sea is monopolized by his family. Other sects have been swallowing their anger for many years. Who can be an exception? Let's talk about the last time the East China Sea Palace was opened. Among the 36 blessed lands in the East China Sea, which sect's disciples were allowed to went to the secret realm for training. On the contrary, it was the Kunlun King sect that travelled thousands of miles to send elite disciples from all walks of life. It seemed as if this East China Sea palace did not belong to the East China Sea, but to their own sect. Taoist Iron Fan was silent for a moment, gritted his teeth and said, "That's right. The East China Sea is the East China Sea of the East China Sea cultivators, but it is not the East China Sea of the Yu King Temple. What in sect's direct lineage? The ancient sect had long since died, so how could it be the turn of the Yu King Temple to continue to act arrogantly? Do Iron Fan?" Madame Liu slowed down her tone and continued, "This action, known as 100,000 gods and demons attacking Penglai, is not completely false. I can tell you. 24 of the 36 blessed lands in the East China Sea have agreed to send people. On the side of the 6 parts of the demon sect, the heavenly demon sect and the mortal sect will also join in. As for the independent cultivators from all over the world who are willing to come to help, there are at least 70,000 to 80,000 of them. As the saying goes, when a wall falls, everyone pushes it. Even if we cannot destroy Yu King Temple this time, we must make it seriously injured and it can no longer regard itself as the overlord of the East China Sea." Madame Liu Taoist Iron Fan said in a deep voice, "If you are just short of people and materials, of course Taixian Mountain is willing to support you, but you have to tell me the truth. If 100,000 gods and demons attack Penglai, will Shushan and Kumling come to help? If the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox sect are really as closely connected as they advertise, then we will not only have to deal with Yu King Temple alone, but all 3 at the same time. Even if the 6 parts of the demon sect gather here, there is no possibility of victory." "Do you worrying too much?" Madame Liu laughed again, but there was a coldness in her eyes. "As far as I know, Kunlun King sect has recently discovered a secret realm. The Jin and Zhenren in the sect are all staying in that secret realm to explore the mechanism. How can they have the time to come all the way to support the East China Sea?" Secret realm. Taoist Iron Fan's eyes also flashed with greed. The so-called secret realm, in the eyes of outsiders, is a blessed land filled with Taoist magic, flying swords, magic weapons and elixirs, which can be taken by the trialists. However, most of the secret realms in the world are either controlled by the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox sect or occupied by the 6 parts of the demon sect. It is extremely difficult for outsiders to enter the secret realm to gain benefits. What to do? The only way is to kill. For example, this time 100,000 gods and demons attack Penglai. Is it all to resist the hegemony of Penglai Yu King Temple? At least most of the demonic monks and casual cultivators must have come with the idea of killing people and seizing treasures. Even Iron Fan Taoist himself is no exception. What about Shushan? Iron Fan Taoist continued to ask. Shushan. Lady Liu pondered for a moment, then sneered, "If everything goes well, Shushan will soon be seriously injured, so there is no need to worry." "Oh?" Taoist Taizan's eyes lit up. "Tell me more." "It's okay to tell me more." Lady Liu looked around and frowned. "Let's not discuss it here. What if someone suddenly passes by? Let's fly to the sea and tell you in detail." The 2 men rode the sword light and left again. Luo Yan hid behind that crack in the rock and was silent for a moment before turning around to look for Shilili below. As a result, he saw Mishi turning around in the passage, her face full of panic. Luo Yan. He remembered at this time that he had already activated the magic circle in the passage long before the 2 men landed. As a result, people outside could not find that crack in the rock, and people inside could not find that passage. Miss Shi was affected by the formation and her 5 senses were confused. At this time, she was spinning in circles. Luo Yan was about to speak after removing the formation with a smile on his face, but the angry Shilili came around behind him and hugged his neck tightly. "Ah, so soft." Click. Chapter 111. There is no way my sword can stab senior sister. On the way back to Yu King Temple, Shilili still felt a little reluctant to leave. After all, this was her first time to go to such a far place to play. Luo Yan was extremely anxious. Not only because he had to confirm the location of the heaven repairing stone, but also because he had heard the news of 100,000 gods and demons attacking Penglai. Although he had the mission of repairing the sky and had to infiltrate this sect to obtain the heaven repairing stone, to be fair, the care of everyone in Tiangong, like family members, still made Luo Yan remember it in his heart. He had feelings for Yu King Temple. As a result, just as they were about to reach Yu King Temple, Kunlun Mirror suddenly sighed and said, "The location of the Butian stone has returned to Yu King Temple, and it can no longer be confirmed." "It's okay," Luo Yan said calmly, "I'll go and find out who will return to the sect in the near future." In addition, regarding the 100,000 gods and demons attacking Penglai, this matter also needs to be told to Master. At this point, he suddenly frowned and said, "Wait. It's impossible that the temple knows nothing about such a big thing. If I go and tell them, how do I explain the source of my information?" Kumlan Mirror asked in confusion. "Just tell the truth that you heard it while passing by. Why do I have the ability to eavesdrop?" Luoyan asked back. "That's not with the help of the formation." Kumlan Mirror just said one sentence, and then reacted. In order to maintain his hypocritical personality, Luoyan has been hiding his own strength from Tiangong Fang. For example, Lai Gong got the acquired 5 elements of the Great Extinction Divine Light, but he forced himself to say that he didn't. For example, Wuxi Island got the 5 poisonous golden silkworm Gu, but he forced himself to say that he didn't. For example, Luoyan's progress in refining Qi and his attainments in formations, anyway, all of them were discounted. Every time he reported to the Master, he would increase the synchronization value, which was very satisfying. If he told the truth now, he would not be able to withstand the questioning of Elder Shidin, and he would definitely be exposed. No more. Luoyan said, "We must believe that Penglai King Temple can withstand these disaster risks. How could the temple be unaware of such a major conspiracy? Are those elders who practiced magic and calculation all losers? What if no one has calculated it?" Kumlin Jing deliberately argued with him. "What if Yu King Temple suffers heavy damage just because you didn't say anything about it? If Yu King Temple has fallen to the point where it has to rely on a mere foundation-building disciple like me to survive, then isn't its demise a matter of time? Why don't I take this opportunity to confirm the location of the Butian stone, or even personally try to seize it, so as not to die with Yu King Temple?" Kumlin Jing was speechless, and almost forgot that he was actually a spy lurking in Yu King Temple. "If nothing happens in Yu King Temple, I will continue to lurk." Luoyan finally made up his mind. "Anyway, I won't suffer a loss, so let's do it." Kumlan Mirror was speechless. Back to Tiangong Fang, as Mishi had expected, Elder Shiding was still angry because they came back too early, and immediately announced that the two would be confined for a year. Apart from that, he didn't blame Luoyan too much. After all, he knew that Luoyan couldn't control his daughter. If he couldn't even control himself, how could he expect his apprentice? So Luoyan and Shilili were locked up in Tiangong Fang, and they were strictly guarded by their senior brothers and sisters. They were confined for a year and were not allowed to go out. As a result, after 3 days of confinement, they learned that Elder Shiding had calmed down, and the confinement period was changed from 1 year to 1 month. Let's not talk about Yu King Temple for now. Anyway, Luoyan took advantage of the confinement to read the game and go to Shushan to play Ling Yunpo and continue the Shushan competition. To this day, even if the Shushan high-level officials are too arrogant, they will not be so stupid as to continue to think that this person is just the junior brother of the Mowing Sword Immortal. Except for the Mowing Sword Immortal himself, no one has the confidence to defeat the Poon Sword Immortal. Perhaps because of this, the following random process seems to be a bit too random, with Sword Immortals who are lucky enough and ranked outside the 40 seeds, as well as quasi-strong men in the top 10. For Ling Yunpo, without using other trump cards, in terms of swordsmanship alone, he is about the 10th to 20th seed. But as long as the trump cards are added, even strong men like Juan Fanhai and Lin Yulanzan are not his opponents. In a sense, these two did not lose to Ling Yunpo, but to Qiu Chang Tian, Yuan Jin who lost to Anzisu in the previous duel, so the 3 veteran strongmen all lost in advance in the draw and were eliminated from the top 10, which surprised and shocked the audience. After several rounds of victories, Ling Yunpo's final opponent was only one left. Anzisu. In the final round, Senior Sister stood on the field with a smile on her face. But in the past, her ceremonial smile often carried a kind of tough determination and a coldness that kept people at a distance. But now, she smiled warmly and happily. Ling Yunpo walked onto the field, bowed to Senior Sister in front of everyone, and then said, "I admit defeat." "Wait." Anzisu's smile immediately faded, turning into a panic that was caught off guard. She wanted to control her strength, fight a coaching battle with her junior brother, and then let him win at the right time, but unexpectedly Ling Yunpo actually admitted defeat first, disrupting all her plans. There were whispers of discussion from all around, but they were not all hostile curses, but some strange, various noisy sounds. "Are you sure you want to admit defeat?" One of the Ening elders who presided over the sword duel slightly lowered the height of the sword light and asked with a strange look on his face. "You know, it is not a traditional custom." King Luo peeped to show humility to fellow disciples. The 7 killings Master Sujian back then would not hold back even if he was facing his fellow disciples. It was because of his attitude that those factions that were optimistic about his strength and wanted to win him over all gave up in the end. Even if you want to form an alliance, you must at least treat your allies with the same attitude. If he can be ruthless even to his fellow disciples, how can you expect him to treat his allies? After Sujian went into seclusion, Zisu also basically inherited Sujian's fighting style. He would show no mercy to the enemy, and would kill them as he should, without giving you any chance to bargain. But Ling Yunpo seemed different. Facing the question of the Yuning elder, Ling Yunpo just nodded, then turned around and said deeply, "Even if I draw my sword, I will not face my senior sister." Then he left the venue. There was silence around the finals venue. No one expected that the cloud-breaking sword immortal, who had fought to the finals with a tough style, would choose to admit defeat without hesitation. Was it because he thought he could not defeat Zisu? No, according to him, he was unwilling to compete with his senior sister for the position of the chief. For a moment, everyone was speechless. Whether they believed him or not, their expressions became complicated. Junior brother Lin is indeed a gentleman. Lin Yulanzhen commented on the seat opposite the venue. With his old-fashioned personality, the title of gentleman is really an extremely remarkable evaluation. I won't comment on his character, but his strength is really weird. Julanfanhai frowned and said, "First of all, there is the dense fog forbidden method. The Shushan high level has reached a consensus that the dense fog caused by the 10th level water flying sword, suspected to be the Kingping sword, must be a forbidden method. The second is the thunder and lightning forbidden method. Although the outside world believes that it is a forbidden method sealed on the 9 heavens thunder sword, Julanfanhai does not think so. Because the lightning forbidden method will inevitably be used under the cover of the thick fog forbidden method, Ling Yunpo is obviously hiding something. What does the Broken Moon Sword Immortal think?" Lin Yulanzhen did not comment on this, but turned to ask Yuan Chenyu. "I think he is quite interesting." Yuan Chenyu said leisurely, "Much more interesting than his senior sister." Julanfanhai shook his head and was about to speak, but heard Yuan Chenyu say again, "But this is not a good thing. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 112. Ranking on the Grand Competition and Receive Rewards. The Shushan Immortal Sword ranking is not officially set up. The official version is called Shushan Competition Results, and its function is to issue rewards based on the results. However, every time the ranking results come out, they will quickly spread to all the peaks of Shushan, and everyone will judge the strength of the sword immortals based on the list. For example, the 3 strongest men of Shushan, Lin Yulanzhen, Julanfanhai, and Yuan Chenyu, have been in the top 4 of the list for many years, and they have been talked about by everyone. As for the top of the list, the Frost Sword Immortal, people generally don't mention her name. If you really want to mention it, it is neither called Frost Sword Immortal nor Zisu, but Grass Cutting Sword Immortal, which means she is the 9th and I am the league, which is no longer the same species, so there is no meaning to compare. Now, Ling Yunpo has risen strongly, killing to the 2nd place with the Realm of Shisui stage, and ruthlessly defeated Yuan Fanhai and Lin Yulanzhen, which naturally caused a sensation in all the peaks of Shushan. At first, everyone called him Little Grass Mower to distinguish him from Grass Mower Sword Immortal. Before they got used to calling him that, Jingan Peak spread the word that senior brother Lin Yulanzhen commented that he has the demeanor of a gentleman. Kuishu Peak was not to be outdone, saying that senior sister Yuan Chenyu also said that Ling Pun has the demeanor of a strong man. The former can also be considered that Lin Yulanzhen lost to a junior in the marrow washing stage, and he couldn't save face, so he praised the other party to avoid making himself look too embarrassed. The latter caused a small wave of public opinion, because Yuan Chenyu's remarks meant that she didn't plan to challenge Ling Yunpo in the next seat challenge. The meaning of these two people was obviously he is at the same level as us. When senior brother Juan Fanhai of Yulong Peak also said that he looks forward to the next competition with him, the Shushan disciples gradually unified their arguments. That is, the usual 3 strong men have become the top 4. It was not that the great grass chopping sword immortal brought out a small grass chopping sword immortal, but that a Shushan disciple became one of the top 4. The former was derogatory and intimidating, while the latter was normal, and it also indicated that Ling Yunpo himself had gotten rid of the bad reputation of Zisu and began to enter the public eye of Shushan with a relatively positive impression. Broken Mountain and Split Sea, Broken Moon and Broken Cloud. The names of the 4 great sword immortals also began to spread, making many people confused and thinking that one of the 4 great masters was called Ling Poon. Let's not talk about the gossip for now. Anyway, the draw was over. The grass-chopping sword immortal was first, the Broken Cloud sword immortal was second, and the 3 of Broken Mountain, Split Sea and Broken Moon did not enter the top 10 at all. Therefore, everyone began to look forward to these 3 masters, who launched an attack in the seed challenge phase and fought with the Broken Cloud sword immortal for the top 5 seeds, with gloomy clouds and bloody winds. As expected, at the beginning of the seed challenge, Juan Van Hai took the lead in appointing Sima Changyan, the 3rd place in the competition, to fight with him. Sima Changyan tried his best to hold on, but was soon defeated in swordsmanship, and neither side even used Taoist magic. In the audience, Zisu and Ling Yunpo stood side by side, and Senior Sister pointed to the field and said, "Junior brother, look, where is Juan Van Hai's strength?" Ling Yunpo looked at it intently for a moment and said, "I can't tell, Senior brother Juan doesn't seem to have any weaknesses." "Indeed." Zisu said affirmatively, Juan Van Hai's real strength lies in the fact that he had sufficient experience in fighting against others before he practiced Taoism. Therefore, when you duel with him, don't think about finding his flaws. It's probably because he is experienced and has made up for all his weaknesses in advance. Sima Changyan competed with him in swordsmanship, but did not use the sword magic, because his flying sword is not as good as Juan Van Hai's, so he is definitely not able to win in Taoism, so it is better to look for a chance to win in swordsmanship. And the reason why Juan Van Hai did not use Taoism is to cover up his strength. You must know that during the sword competition, your every move was seen by others. At this point, she suddenly reacted and smiled embarrassedly. But junior brother has the Kingping sword, which can create fog to cover the entire venue, so you don't have to worry about that. Ling Yunpo nodded upon hearing this, and had to admit that what senior sister said was indeed reasonable. Although he hit the green mist cover and the Kan Mountains to cover his figure, both Lin Yulanzhen and senior brother Cunning, who had ambushed him in that palace earlier, had come up with strategies to deal with it. There is no absolutely unsolvable and sure win tactic. As I said before, the battle between cultivators is about rank and trump card. Either you have a higher rank and can defeat the opponent with one force and crush him directly. Or it depends on who has a deeper trump card and takes it out at the critical moment to make the final decision. He was thinking about it, and saw that Lin Yulanzhen and Yuan Jinyu also chose their opponents and won the battle. So, except for senior sister Ram's top spot, the remaining rankings of the top 5 were occupied by Poon, Van Hai, Juanzhen, and Su Yu in turn. And then, there was nothing else. With the end of the last sword duel, the top 100 of this competition were determined. Ling Yunpo thought someone would come to challenge him, but he was ignored the whole time. He felt relieved, but he couldn't help but wonder secretly. However, his doubts were soon answered. It turned out that the rewards for the top 5 seats in this Shushan competition were the same. They could pick any item from the 3rd floor of the Shushan Yuan cave and take it away. After the ranking of the competition was determined, a Jindan Senran came forward and led Zisu, Ling Yunpo, Juan Van Hai, Lin Yulanzhen, and Yuan Jinyu, a total of 5 people, to the golden summit of Immortal Mountain. Turning east from the sky above the main hall of the Golden Summit, there is a cliff hanging in the air, called Sacrifice Cliff. The sword immortals controlled the sword light, soared down, passed through the clouds, and fell into a large hole at the bottom of the valley. Continuing down, you can see flames rising below. This is the Fire Yuanzhen gang. Jin Danzhen said calmly, "Hold your breath and concentrate, don't inhale the ganki." Everyone hurriedly held their breath, and saw Jim Danzhen took out a ruler and gently rotated it in his hand, and then several light flowers appeared, covering everyone. Ling Yunpo could see clearly from behind that it was the acquired spiritual treasure Chuan Guan ruler owned by the Shanqing sect of Shushan. The light flower covered the whole body, isolating the red fire from outside, and could not get in. Jin Danzhen put away the Chuan Guan ruler and said, "The Fire Yuan cave is very large and deep, and even immortals can hardly explore the whole picture. The deeper you go, the more intense the Fire Yuanzhen gang is, so there is a saying that the Fire Yuan cave goes straight to the center of the earth. In addition, the deeper you go, the more winding and tortuous the passage is, the more complex the intersections are, and the changes are difficult to remember. Also, the Fire Yuanzhen gang melts the rock wall and then solidifies again, making the route uncertain and very easy to get lost. Next, you can't move arbitrarily, otherwise if you get separated, the gods can't save you." Everyone hurriedly agreed, and the sword light tightly followed the real person. Jindan Shinran's expression did not change, but he just led the way straight ahead. After an unknown amount of time, everyone finally arrived at a huge underground space. The bottom was a sea of magma, which was constantly rolling and bubbling, and there was endless white gas rising. The surroundings were cylindrical inner walls, and every 3 feet there was a small cave, about the height of a forearm, and inside was a treasure, shining and colorful, filling the cave with brilliance. Jindan Shinran held the sword light still, waved his hand and said, "You have a quarter of an hour to choose by yourself. No one will be allowed after that time." So the 5 of them quickly urged the sword light, spiraled around the rock wall and walked downstream, constantly using their spiritual sense to scan the secret treasure in the cave next to them. Chapter 113. Will Senior Sister be the heroine? Ling Yunpo quickly activated the sword light, and his spiritual sense swept through the treasures in the surrounding caves, which almost made his heart surge. There are many treasure caves in Yuan Cave, and the third cave in the depths is where everyone is now. The rare treasures inside are much rarer than those in the first and second caves. For example, there are almost countless 10th level flying swords and magic weapons, as well as various elixirs, rare treasures, etc. Ling Yunpo even saw a fragment of a scripture of Xifu Lady, which is the 7th thunder of the 10 kinds of thunder methods that Qiu Changtai wants to collect. If it weren't for the gold mercury elixir, he almost couldn't help but change it. Continuing to press down the sword light for a while, Ling Yunpo saw a candlestick in a cave with a tiny flame jumping on it. This is a trace of the Great Sun True Yang Fire, one of the innate 5 elements true veins. The 5 elements divine light must be upgraded. No, forbearance. You have to forbearance. Ling Yunpo repeatedly brainwashed himself, forcibly suppressed the fear surge to take this innate fire, and continued to lower the sword light. Only one's own cultivation is fundamental. All external objects and external methods are false. Just thinking this, he heard Senior Sister and suddenly call him, "Junior brother." Ling Yunpo quickly turned into a sword light and rushed to Nzisu's side. Sure enough, in the cave next to her, he saw the golden mercury elixir in a small bottle, about 1 spoonful. "Senior Sister, you," Ling Yunpo was about to say something when he was interrupted by Nzisu. "You go get it first, I'll look for it." Okay. Ling Yunpo didn't hesitate. Anyway, if Senior Sister didn't find the second bottle of golden mercury elixir, I would use this bottle to exchange with her, it would be the same. He took the golden mercury elixir, and then drove the sword light to circle around, remembering the previous positions of the purple palace thunder and the sun true yang fire, and finally quickly ascended to the height and returned to the side of Jindan Shinran. Although Jindan Shinran was in the sky and closed his eyes to rest, he was actually monitoring the movements of everyone below through the Chuanguan ruler. At this time, Ling Yunpo's sword light turned back. He also knew that the other party had taken the golden mercury elixir. He just nodded lightly and said nothing. Soon, Lin Julanzan and Juan Fanhai also returned one after another. About 10 minutes later, Nzisu also rose into the air with the sword light. Yoyo nodded and smiled at Ling Yunpo, which meant that she had found it too. A quarter of an hour was almost gone, but Yuan Chenyu was still searching below. Her sword light flew very fast, almost instantly making a circle, and then quickly circled to the next level. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand like lightning and took something from a cave. Then, she immediately merged her body and sword into one, turning into a stream of light and rising rapidly. The stream of light stopped in front of Jindan Shinran, revealing Yuan Chenyu's tired face, and smiled. "May I ask, Shinran, is it overtime?" "A few more breaths," Jindan Shinran said lightly, waving the Chuanguan ruler again, separating the light flowers, covering everyone's bodies, and then pulling up the sword light and leaving. Everyone turned around in the Yuan cave, and saw the colorful light on the Chuanguan ruler, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right. Everyone followed Jindan Shinran left and right, and finally passed through a long vertical corridor, finally leaving the deep underground and returning to the canyon. 3 days later, at noon, gather on the top of the lighting pink cliff and enter the demon-locking tower for the trial. Jindan Shinran said, and the sword light soared into the sky and went towards the direction of the Imai Golden Summit. Everyone also watched the sword light and left impatiently. Only Nzisu and Ling Yunpo went side by side, talking and laughing all the way, and slowly returned to the King Luo Peak Taoist temple. "Senior Sister, did you get the golden mercury Dahua liquid?" Ling Yunpo asked as soon as he entered the Taoist temple. "Yes, I got it." Nzisu took out a transparent bottle from his sleeve. There was a ball of golden liquid in it, rolling and bouncing at the bottom of the bottle, as if it had spirituality. Very good, senior sister, go to the inner room to refine it first, I will protect you outside. Ling Yunpo said immediately. Zisu hummed. After all, there was nothing wrong with what junior brother said, so she turned and walked towards the secret room in the belly of the mountain, where Su Jian was in seclusion. Ling Yunpo stood outside, took out the golden mercury elixir, and secretly calculated in his heart. According to common sense, such a precious thing that can improve the elixir grade must be taken as soon as possible to avoid more trouble. However, Ling Yunpo himself has not reached the level of Watfu. If the purple mansion is not formed, if the golden mercury elixir is taken, it will harden the Danton and become a poison. Therefore, it has to be stored somewhere properly. After thinking about it, it seems that it can only be placed in the secret room in the belly of King Luo Peak. If it is changed to other places, it seems that there is a risk of theft. He thought about it anxiously for a long time, and finally waited for Nzisu to refine the medicine and come out of seclusion. At this time, senior sister had changed into a light yellow dress, her hair was fixed with a jade hairpin, and the excess hair was braided into a braid, which fell from the side of her neck to her chest, making her look particularly soft and charming. Seeing senior sister's restrained light and deep eyes, Ling Yunpo knew that she had perfected the purple palette and her realm had greatly increased, which was equivalent to an extra 60 years of hard practice. Sister, how is the refining going? Very good. Zisu replied with a smile, this golden mercury elixir is worthy of being a foundation-building wonder. Every time I refine a little bit, the purple mansion becomes a little more rounded. In the end, the inner wall of the Danton is almost as white as snow and as bright as jade, and the foundation of Taoism is much more solid than before. Sister. Ling Yunpo said with a smile, if I remember correctly, your purple mansion is approaching perfection and you have entered the so-called Jade Mansion realm. Based on past experience, anyone who builds a Jade Mansion before forming a golden elixir has about a 70% chance of forming a third-grade golden elixir. If the elixir is of the highest quality, then the nascent soul will have the hope of forming an immortal infant. After forming an immortal infant, there will be a chance to become a saint in the flesh, a Daluyo golden immortal, then wouldn't I be the junior brother of a Daluyo golden immortal? Don't be silly. Zisu said with a smile, do you think it's so easy to become a Daluyo Jinxian? You have to walk every step without any obstacles, only with a very small probability of success. I won't say more, your gold mercury elixir liquid is not needed for the time being, put it in the secret room for now. Yes. Ling Yunpo agreed immediately. The two of them passed through the inner hall, secret room, and tunnel again, and finally arrived in front of the stone wall where Su Jian was in seclusion. Zisu opened the underground secret compartment and carefully put the gold mercury elixir liquid into it. Seeing her solemn expression, Ling Yunpo couldn't help but feel a little moved, and suddenly remembered the asking about love Taoist tradition mentioned by Yuan Jinyu. Sister. He asked carefully, I heard that there seem to be 3 kinds of sects in our Shushan sisterhood. Zisu was slightly surprised, yes. Because most of our sword immortals are passionate and emotional, the probability of falling into the devil's barrier in love is much higher than that of Kunlun and Penglai. It is also because of this that there are 3 different attitudes in the sect on how to deal with worldly love. One is to be heartless and heartless, the second is to forget about love and annihilate, and the third is to ask about love with the sword. She explained the 3 schools in detail, and her explanation was similar to Yuan Jinyu's. The heartless school is self-centered and exterminates love. The forgetful school is to fall in love first and then separate, seeing through the world. The questioning school is to know and stay with people, and never leave. To use the analogy of online novels, the heartless school has no heroine, the forgetful school is literary and artistic, and the questioning school is dog food. So sister, what route are you going to take? Ling Yunpo finally asked the main question. Zisu was stunned for a moment before he lowered his head and said, of course I will inherit Master's Taoist tradition. Chapter 114. Demon Locking Tao Group Tour Package 3 days later. At the top of Lidenping, hundreds of disciples from the Shushan Immortal Sword ranking had already assembled in front of the entrance to the Demon Locking Tower. Ling Yunpo stood in the team, and from time to time he glanced at Senior Sister and next to him. Senior Sister is also going to the Wen King Flow, great. Then can't I? Not long after, another group of Jindan Immortals also arrived on their swords, led by a Yuning Elder, and the sword light fell like rain. Although the Foundation Establishment Realm and the Jindan Realm entered the tower together in this Demon Locking Tower trial, they took their own routes after entering the tower. The goal of the Foundation Establishment Realm Disciples is to start from the top of the inverted tower and eventually reach the Four Symbols Formation Eye on the 30th floor. The Jinn and Immortals enter from the Four Symbols Formation Eye on the 30th floor and go all the way down to the Liangia Formation Eye on the 50th floor. Therefore, there will be no intersection between the two sides. After watching the Jinn and Sword Immortal team fall into the valley, Master Jin retracted his gaze and looked at the Foundation Establishment Realm Disciples in front of him again. This Jin was the direct disciple of Master Yuzheng of the Shanking sect of Mount Chu, and the leader of the Foundation Establishment Disciples this time. He swept his eyes over the crowd and said in a deep voice, "The trial in the Demon Locking Tower is different from the Shushan competition. The demons imprisoned inside don't care about the time limit, and there are no Yuning elders to watch over and accompany them throughout the competition. In the competition, if the life sword is cut off, it is just forbidden to be sent out of the competition. But in the Demon Locking Tower, the fate of a broken sword is often equivalent to death. In the past generations of Demon Locking Tower trials, the one with the most deaths was 72 people, and the survival rate was less than 30%. If you don't want to participate in the trial, it's not too late to withdraw now." Zenran Jinwu had a stern face and waited for a long time, but no one stood up and said they wanted to withdraw. After all, Shushan is such a super involuted sect. In the words of Ling Shu, the senior brother of Tiangong Fang, Shushan recruits 10 times more disciples than Kunlun in each generation. After hundreds of years, less than 1/10 of Kunlun survived, but the surviving sword immortals of the same level can beat 10 Kunlun monks. Such an exaggerated combat effectiveness is based on an extremely high loss rate. In this environment, those who can kill are all kings of rolls. How could they be scared away by the mere locked demon tower? For that kings of rolls, whether it is a 90%, 70%, 50%, or 30% pass rate, they will not be afraid at all, okay? Seeing that no one responded, Jin Wuzenran turned his head and stood silently with his hands behind his back, as if waiting for something. Not long after, a flute sound suddenly came from a distance, melodious and clear, like the roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix, and instantly attracted the attention of the Shushan disciples present. I saw Qiu Cheng Tian, the chief of Kunlun this generation, wearing a white robe, holding a jade flute, and stepping on a sword. No one had ever seen a man who came out with his own background music, so they were all shocked by the style of this king. For a moment, there was complete silence. Qiu Cheng Tian put down the sword light and stepped on the ground. The last note of the flute was just played on time. He put away the jade flute and hung it on his waist, and bowed to Master Jinwu. "Master." My dear nephew Qiu was in a good mood. Master Jinwu smiled faintly, which was completely different from the cold face he had shown to the disciples of Shushan before. "It's just that I saw the wonders of Tianfa for the first time, with clusters of flowers and beautiful scenery, and I was inspired for a while." Qiu Cheng Tian said modestly, and turned around to salute the disciples of Shushan. "Coming Qiu Cheng Tian, meet all the Shushan Taoist friends. I have heard of you for a long time." The disciples of Shushan hurriedly returned the greeting. For no other reason, one was because of Master Jinwu's kind attitude towards him, and the other was because of the aura and demeanor of the chief Qiu, which made these usually unruly disciples of the Immortal Sword less polite at this time. Even Yuanfen Hegai, who had been absent-minded, clasped his fist symbolically. This Qiu Cheng Tian is the chief disciple of Kunlun Taiking sect of this generation, and the direct disciple of Ziwei sect master. Jin Wuzenran said again, "You will participate in the Demon Locking Tower trial with us this time. Don't be impolite and let Kunlun look down on us Shushan." "Absolutely not." The Shushan disciples agreed in unison. Of course, what they think in their hearts is another matter. However, the title of Kunlun's chief disciple is indeed enough to scare people. In particular, many Shushan disciples did not know that Kunlun had a saying of small chief and big chief. They subconsciously used the rules of the Immortal Sword ranking to apply it, and thought that Qiu Cheng Tian was Kunlun's #1 person under the golden elixir. They couldn't help but glance at Nzisu. I wonder who is more powerful, the grass-cutting sword fairy of Shushan or the great chief Qiu of Kunlun? Nzisu didn't care about the eyes of the crowd at all. He just returned the greeting with everyone, and then turned his head and continued to look at the towering demon locking tower that pierced the valley. "After entering the demon locking tower, you must form a group and follow my orders." Master Jinwu continued, "When to continue, when to stay where you are, and when to disperse and act automatically, there are corresponding instructions. If you don't obey orders, you will be left behind by the team, killed by the monsters, or killed by me when I'm in a bad mood. Don't expect anyone to save you." The Shushan disciples were silent. "Let's go," Master Jing said coldly with a flick of his long sleeves. So the Shushan disciples roughly lined up in 4 rows and followed Master Jing into the entrance of the demon locking tower. The top 5 on the immortal sword list walked in front of the team, following Master Jing closely, while Qiu Chang's Time was pulled to his side by Master Jing for special protection. Ling Yunpo walked beside Zisu and looked at Qiu Chang's Time quietly, but found that Qiu Chang's Time also cast a secret glance at him. Then, the future self withdrew his gaze and continued to look forward intently. The passage leading to the demon locking tower is a long corridor wide enough for 4 people to walk side by side. It is so deep and unpredictable that you can't see the end at a glance. Ling Yunpo walked forward in the corridor and suddenly found that this place was very similar to the rock crevice passage leading to the secret realm of Queen Mother of the West. The sense of Zhu was very strong. "A Jing?" Ling Yunpo asked in a low voice, "Is there a secret realm ahead?" "Yes." Kunlun Mirror was silent for a moment and replied, "Also, just now Qiu Chang's Time sent me a message through the future Kunlun Mirror." "Message?" "Yes." Kunlun Mirror said, "He said that he came here this time to resolve a fatal disaster that you were about to face." Ling Yunpo. "What, it's time to cheat again?" In short, he doesn't plan to contact you directly this time, so that you don't have to remember what he said and did this time, and then demonstrate it again to your past self in the future. To be honest, it's true. Ling Yunpo nodded and said, "It should have been done a long time ago. In addition, he has another word to remind you." Kunlun Mirror said. "You say? No matter what?" Kunlun Jing's voice paused. "You must believe in Senior Sister Anne." "What are you talking about?" Ling Yunpo was furious. "Would I betray my senior sister? Wake up, do you really think of yourself as a disciple of Shushan?" Kunlun Jing said helplessly, "Joining King Luo Peak and becoming Su Jian's disciple, isn't it to seize the fragment of the booty and stone? Well, how can saving the world be considered a betrayal?" Ling Yunpo argued. Chapter 115 Senior Sister led the team, experienced tour guide. After passing through the narrow corridor, everyone entered the secret realm of the demon locking tower. The first scene after arriving at the secret realm was a spacious hall. Master Jing asked everyone to take a break here and adjust their state, so everyone sat or stood, chatted with fellow disciples, or looked around carefully. Ling Yunpo was particularly alert to the surroundings because of Qiu Chang's Time's reminder. He noticed that the hall was a regular octathedral structure, that is, it was composed of 8 walls, and the dome was an octathedral cone. All the walls, floors and domes were engraved with some strange but familiar characters. Immortal seals. This kind of immortal seal, also known as tadpole characters, is composed of various twisted and tadpole-like strokes. It is said that each character has no meaning, or has infinite meaning. Only when a large number of immortal seals form a sentence, a paragraph, or even an article, can it have readable and understandable meaning. According to the Kunlun Mirror, anything with this kind of immortal seal can be considered an ancient thing. The ancient times here are even older than the times of the ancient Najiri sects. This proves that the demon locking tower was not built by the ancient sect, but a more ancient building. A mirror. Ling Yunpo asked again, "Can you understand the meaning of these immortal seals?" "Humans and demons have different paths." Kunlun Mirror replied. "What do you mean?" "It means literally." Kunlun Mirror said, "Humans and demons are not the same after all, so don't let your guard down. So the predecessor who built the demon locking tower is still a racist." Ling Yunpo said casually, and suddenly noticed that Qiu Chang's Time had disappeared. "Hey, where did he go?" "He left a long time ago, and I told you not to worry about it." Kunlun Mirror said. Ling Yunpo frowned, and only heard Zisu beside him asked with concern, "Junior brother, what's wrong?" "Nothing." Ling Yunpo smiled quickly. "Don't be too nervous." Zisu comforted him. "Although there are many monsters in this demon locking tower, the powerful ones are all in the lower levels. Besides, there is Jin and Zhenren leading the team, we don't need to worry too much." Ling Yunpo agreed, and smiled helplessly in his heart. What Senior Sister Anne said made sense, but I couldn't explain to her that I knew there would be danger ahead by using the cheat to predict the future. Therefore, he could only hide the worry on his face and skillfully show a reassuring smile. After a short rest, Master Jing summoned the Shushan disciples again and announced that it was time for free action. There are arches under the 8 walls, corresponding to the corridors leading to 8 directions, which is exactly the meaning of the 8 gates of Qimendan Jia. Among them, in addition to the shaman leading to the outside of the tower, there are Guy, Shu, Du, Jin, Shang, and Si, a total of 7 passages. Kaiman leads to the next level, and Shaman leads to a safe area without danger. Du and Jinman led to low-risk areas, where the demons are less aggressive and most of them will not actively attack humans. Jing and Shangman led to medium-risk areas, where demons will actively attack people, so you need to be more careful. Simon leads to high-risk areas, where the demons behind them are often powerful or have strange abilities and are absolutely difficult to deal with. Master Jing suggested that the disciples of the Marrow Cleansing stage should enter the Du and Jing gates, and the rest of the disciples should enter the Jing and Shang gates, and each of them should undergo the corresponding trials. In addition, the top 5 on the Immortal Sword ranking can enter the Death Gate. At this point, Master Jing sneered again and said, "Of course, if you are confident in your own strength, you don't have to follow my advice. Anyway, there are disciples who try to challenge higher difficulties in every session. A few are hidden, but the vast majority are seeking their own death. In any case, it has nothing to do with me. I will only give you 1 hour. When the time is up, I will lead the team to the next level. No one will be waiting after the time is up." After saying that, he leaned against the wall of the Shu gate, folded his arms, and quietly closed his eyes to rest. After everyone thought for a moment, they formed teams of 3 or 2 and dispersed into the surrounding gates. Ling Yunpa watched from behind and saw that there were fewer people who chose the Du and Jing gates, and the most people chose the Jing and Shang gates. Strangely, many disciples chose the Shu gate, because it was only the first level and they had no intention of participating in the trial. Julan Hai was also among them, and he didn't seem to plan to spend too much effort on the first floor. Yuan Jinu stood up and walked directly towards the Jing men. Lin Yulanzhen chose the Death Gate. So among the top 5 seats of the Immortal Sword, only Ling Yunpo and Zisu had not yet made a choice. "Junior brother, which one do you want to choose?" Zisu said with a smile. "It's up to me." Ling Yunpo said immediately. "This blood pool is in the Death Gate on the 28th floor of the Locking Demon Tower. Don't miss it." Zisu said with a smile, "As for the trials on the other floors, you can go or not. If you want to act in advance, I can take you to the Death Gate." Ling Yunpa was very moved. "Listen, the Death Gate that other disciples don't recommend going to is just strolling for my sister." He was silent for a moment, and when he found that Kunlin Jin didn't say anything to stop him, he nodded and said, "Then let's go for a walk." "Well, let's go, junior brother." Zisu stood up gracefully. The two walked towards the Death Gate, which immediately attracted the attention of countless Shushan disciples. Before arriving at the archway, Zisu reached out and held Lin Yunpo's hand, then walked in. This was not meant to be ambiguous, but there was a formation mechanism in the demon locking tower. Even if the two entered one after the other, it would be easy to walk into different rooms, so holding hands was just in case. Ling Yunpo was held by the hand of his senior sister, and he felt her soft and warm hands, and her slender fingers, so he couldn't help but intertwine his 5 fingers with hers and hold them tightly. Zisu blushed slightly, but was embarrassed to show her shy expression to her junior brother, so she quickly turned her head and quickened her pace. Ling Yunpo followed closely behind her, and could only see her fair and slender neck, which seemed to have a slight blush. Stepping into the Death Gate, it was pitch black around, as if all the light was isolated outside the Death Gate. Ling Yunpo used his spiritual sense to scan the surroundings, and this time he did not encounter isolation, only knowing that he and his senior sister were in a long and narrow passage. After walking a few dozen steps, he suddenly became clear, which was also a typical effect of space-type formations. The two were in a valley. There were no trees in the valley, but there were large tracts of lush grasslands and rivers running through it. This was a typical climate in Longyu. When Qiu Changtai left the sector train, he was used to seeing this kind of scenery. Zisu suddenly warned, "Brother, be careful. It's Yu Yu." Before he finished speaking, several monsters broke out of the ground. These monsters looked like Komorabu monitors, with red and yellow scales covering their bodies, claws, fangs, and serrated tails. Their pupils were cold and fierce, and they looked at the two with bloodthirsty and ferocious eyes. Ling Yunpo immediately flew up with Zisu's sword, but he saw that the pupils of one of the monsters called Yu Yu suddenly contracted violently. It opened its bloody mouth and roared anxiously. Although Lin Yunpo could not understand the demon's words, he could hear the horror in them, as if he was saying, "Be careful. It's that sword fairy who cuts grass." The other two Yu Yu were startled when they heard the sound, and immediately turned around and plunged into the hole that had just broken through the ground, trying to get back underground quickly. The next second, the Taoist magic on the frost sword was activated, and endless snowflakes shot down, accompanied by Anzisu's angry shout. "Where are the demons going?" Chapter 116. Heading towards an unknown direction. The sky was vast, the wilderness was vast, the wind blew the grass low and the cattle and sheep could be seen. At this time, the herd of cattle and sheep was fleeing in panic, being chased by Anzisu in the air like a falcon. Ling Yunpo was dumbfounded watching from behind. Whether it was a monster the size of a wild bull or a monster as fast as a cheetah, they were all killed by the senior sister and fled in panic. The opponent had thick skin and flesh, so Anzisu would focus on the weak defenses and pierce the flying sword from the eyes, nose or limbs. The opponent was as fast as lightning, so Anzisu would block most of its path with sword energy, and then use the frost sword to make a decisive and unavoidable attack. Ling Yunpo had seen such an extremely precise sword path in Lin Yuanzhen's hands, but as Juan Fanhai said, compared to Anzisu, it is really inferior. In fact, Ling Yunpo suspected that senior sister Ram's sword path was not purely based on calculation, but relied on a certain degree of intuition, which was the fighting intuition that could only be possessed by practicing the 7 killing swordsmanship to a high level. Without thinking, the direction and timing of each attack were just right, accurate and deadly. Sometimes, when a monster was forced into a dead end, they would gather together and turn around to attack together. Various magic arts were brilliant and shot at Anzisu and Ling Yunpo. Anzisu activated the Taoist magic of the frost sword, generating countless frost sword ki, and destroyed all these magic arts one by one. The remaining sword ki fell like a rainstorm, piercing the monsters that dared to resist into the ground. Ling Yunpo followed behind and watched for a long time before he realized that his sister's invincibility was that she was exceptionally strong in all aspects. With abundant and strong true ki, the rank of the frost sword was also high, coupled with rich fighting experience and special combat intuition. Monsters that were slightly weaker than her were almost slaughtered one-sidedly in the battle. The nickname Sword Fairy was not completely random. As for how she would fare against a strong person, Ling Yunpo was not sure, because senior sister was now the number 1 person below the Jindan level in Shushan, and the Jindan true person would not attack her, so there was no way to see it. The only time he indirectly witnessed it was when Shiziming of the Political Affairs Hall used a secret method to forcibly cross the level and raise his cultivation to the Fate Dan level, which seriously injured her. The price was that he was killed on the spot by her. From this point of view, senior sister is not incapable of fighting a battle of the weak over the strong, but the opponents she usually faces are too weak, and she always wins a crushing game. My senior sister, the Eternal God. Do you want to try it too? Anzisu suddenly stopped swordplay and asked with a smile. His tone was so relaxed that it seemed as if he was not fighting a monster, but hunting. Okay. Ling Yunpo pulled out the Kingpin and Li's swords. He had no sympathy for the monsters below. After all, the monsters in the Death Gate area were all bad races that would actively attack humans and even eat people, and there was no Bodhisattva chanting Buddha nearby to comment on all things are equal. Our Shushan sword immortal is just so barbaric. Ling Yunpo silently chanted the spell, and then activated the Taoist method after the rain in the empty mountain on the Kingpin sword, generating countless narrow and sharp water-based sword ki, which poured down densely. Compared with senior sister Ram's exquisite swordsmanship, his fighting style is undoubtedly much rougher. He didn't care about any weaknesses or vital points. When he saw the monster, he would just shoot a burst of sword ki. Because after the rain in the empty mountain has its own armor-breaking effect, it ignores the monster's shell defense and slaughters them like chopping melons and vegetables. Occasionally, there are monsters that resist stubbornly and refuse to sit and wait for death. When Ling Yunpo wants to release magic, he will point his hand and immediately hit it with a golden lightning, killing the opponent first. This is not the thunder method possessed by Kyo Chain Tian, but the Taoist method 9 Heaven Shocking Thunder on the Li's sword. The characteristics are long attack distance and extremely strong penetration, which can kill the enemy from a long distance. The 2 senior sisters and brothers bombarded the air and soon slaughtered all the monsters in their sight. The remaining ones also fled in all directions and ran to a place where they could not find them. A mere Death Gate area, that's it. Ling Yunpo was disdainful in his heart. Kunlun Mirror knew what he was thinking and reminded him. Think about it carefully. If these monsters did not flee in panic when they saw your senior sister, but gathered together to precede you, would you still be able to kill them so easily? Ling Yunpo thought carefully and it was true. If I was besieged by so many monsters, I would first have to devote half of my strength to self-protection, such as releasing green mist cover in the Kan Mountains to cover my body. In this way, in order to prevent the enemy from noticing my position, I naturally could not attack at will. Sister, Ling Yunpo asked knowingly, wondering, why don't these monsters resist and just let us kill them? After the Shushan competition, the locking monster tower was opened once. Zissou explained, I was here at the time, then what? Oh, I understand, you are worthy at being my sister. Ling Yunpo was slightly startled, and then said with a smile. The name of the sword fairy who cut grass was not only feared by the disciples of Shushan, but also by the monsters. Zissou waved her hand indifferently and said, it's nothing, these beasts are bullies. If you are not strong enough, they will rush up and eat you. If you are strong enough, they can only run away in panic. Ling Yunpo nodded repeatedly, convinced. The monsters below were almost killed, and the two pressed down the sword light to clean up the battlefield. These monsters have not reached the transformation stage, and they don't have demon pills. Only the materials on their bodies may be worth some money. For example, the giant lizard monster encountered at the beginning has surprisingly hard scales. If it is made into inner armor, it can resist the frontal assassination of the flying sword, although it will be damaged after blocking 3 or 4 times, it is still enough to save lives at critical moments. After all, not all Shushan disciples have defensive magic weapons such as the Divine Fire Cover and the Jade Embarks. After roughly harvesting the materials and putting them in the storage bag, the two embarked on the return journey again. When they came to the entrance to this space, in a valley somewhere, Ling Yunpo did not see the original entrance to the passage. Just as he was wondering, he saw Zissou suddenly summon the frost sword and directly activate the Taoist magic on the sword. Suddenly, there was heavy snow, covering the sky and the sun, and flying down with a rustling sound. Several monsters ran out from the back of the hill in a panic. They wanted to take advantage of the two people looking for the entrance and relaxing their vigilance to quietly attack the two from behind, but they did not expect that Zissou would directly see through their position. Before they could escape a few steps, the snowflake sword energy fell on them, their skin and flesh burst, blood gushed out, and they were all killed on the spot. Demons cannot leave this space that imprisons them. Zissou explained softly, so, once there are demons near the entrance, these entrances will not appear. Therefore, when we enter a certain space, if there are demons nearby, the entrance will disappear immediately, making it impossible for us to leave. Pay attention to this mechanism. Of course, you can also use this mechanism in reverse to detect whether there are any hidden demons nearby. I see. Ling Yunpo said he was willing to learn. As the demons were killed, the entrance to the return passage also emerged from the void. The two flew into the passage on their swords, passed through the long dark corridor, and soon returned to the original hall. However, the hall was filled with a tense atmosphere. When several Shushan disciples saw Zissou and Ling Yunpo returning from the passage, they immediately summoned their natal swords and prepared for battle. Ling Yunpo frowned slightly, and saw Zissou raised his eyebrows and also pulled out the frost sword. His murderous aura almost rose to the sky, and he asked coldly, "What are you going to do?" "We also want to ask what your King Luo Peak's intentions are." A Shushan disciple in the crowd screamed, "According to the sect rules, what is the crime of killing fellow disciples without authorization? My senior sister and I have always been together. We entered the death gate in full view of everyone, and just returned from it. How can we say that we killed fellow disciples without authorization?" Ling Yunpo hurriedly stopped senior sister Anne, who had her eyebrows raised, and asked calmly in a deep voice. "Our disciples of Qian Peak were not attacked by demons in the injury gate, but died at the hands of Shushan fellow disciples." The disciple opposite said with red eyes and grief, "Now that my master is not here, please ask Master Jingwu to make the decision for my Qian Peak. The murderer is Su Jian, the leader of King Luo Peak." Stupid exam. Chapter 117 Controversy, Suspicion and Betrayal. This is impossible. Hearing the name said by the Qian Peak disciple, Zissou's eyes widened in disbelief, and she blurted out subconsciously, "This is impossible." She looked horrified, and her eyes swept across the crowd again, as if to strengthen her persuasiveness, and emphasized again, "This is absolutely impossible. Before my junior brother and I entered the tower, my master was still in seclusion." No one responded. The faces of all the Shushan disciples present had some doubtful but hostile expressions. "I dare to ask Master Jingwu." Ling Yunpo said loudly, "Excuse me, has anyone seen my master kill someone?" Master Jingwu, who had been silent from the beginning, spoke for a long time. "I have never seen it." "Then why did this fellow disciple conclude that it was my master who did it?" Ling Yunpo turned around, his eyes suddenly sharp, and asked sternly. "My disciple from Qian Peak died from the water-based sword energy, with the sword in the back." The disciple gritted his teeth and said, and a line of text was left at the scene, saying those who scheme will be stabbed in the back, with Sujian's signature below. I see. Ling Yunpo turned his head to look at Master Jinwu, and said in a deep voice, the matter is clear now, it's an extremely clumsy plot to sow discord. If my master really wanted revenge, why would he target a disciple at the Foundation establishment stage? Wouldn't it be a more direct method to challenge the master of Qian Peep to a duel? It would also leave you all speechless. Master Jinwu was silent for a moment before he spoke again. Indeed. Please judge for yourself, Master Jinwu. The Qian Peak disciple who had just spoken hurriedly shouted, even if it wasn't done by the master of King Luo Peak, it's possible that a disciple from King Luo Peak did it, pretending to be their master. Because my senior brother had an old grudge with Mzisu. Since you were accusing me and my senior sister, please produce evidence. Ling Yunpo threatened immediately, if you only rely on a vague message written by someone unknown to you to slander my King Luo Peak, don't blame my men for being ruthless. The disciple of Qian Peep gritted his teeth, but dared not provoke again, and could only remain silent in anger. After all, Poon Sword Immortal was the second place in the Shushan competition, and had defeated Lin Yulanzhen and Juan Fanhai. If the other party wanted to compete with him, he would definitely have no chance of winning. It would be better to wait until he left the demon locking tower and go to the Peak Master to preside over justice. I have something to say too. Lin Yulanzhen, who had just returned to the hall, said after understanding the situation with his junior brothers, if it was really junior brother Lin or senior sister An who attacked and killed them, why did they leave such a sentence and expose their identities? Maybe it was to establish authority. Juan Fanhai said lazily beside him. This is ridiculous. Lin Yulanzhen said coldly, what kind of authority are you establishing? He killed someone and deliberately left clues pointing to himself, and now he flatly denies the accusation. What kind of way is this to establish authority? This can only make the Shushan disciples distrust each other and everyone is in danger. That's right. Zenran Jinwu nodded and said, no matter who the real murderer is, the purpose of leaving this line of text is to deceive others and fish in troubled waters. In the next trial, disciples on the same peak must stay together, advance and retrieve together, and are not allowed to be alone. If you encounter a sneak attack from anyone, do not rush to retaliate, and be sure to come back and report to me first. After that, he was about to lead everyone down to the second floor, but heard Yuan Jinwu suddenly say, Zenran Jinwu, can you wait? What's the matter? Zenran Jinwu stopped. I agree that the murderer is trying to alienate our Shushan fellow disciples. Yuan Jinwu said leisurely, but isn't there a non-Shushan disciple among the people who entered the demon locking tower this time? Where is the Kunlun chief named Qiu Changtai now? As soon as these words came out, it was like a bolt from the blue, and immediately caused the Shushan disciples to talk about it. Even if everyone is still wary of disciples from other peaks, they certainly can't say that they suspect their fellow disciples in front of Master Jinwu. However, it's different for Kunlun monks. Saying that Qiu Changtai is a serious suspect and asking him to be arrested for careful interrogation and strict surveillance, this can't be wrong, right? Ling Yunpo vomited blood when he heard it in the back. Damn, you thought Qiu Changtai was a Kunlun monk, but you didn't know that he had another identity called Ling Yunpo. How could I frame myself? Hey, wait. Couldn't it really be done by my future self? Considering the last trip to the palace, the last level of the two worlds of the mortal world, when I was Qiu Changtai, I was plotted by the future Luo Yan and experienced a bitter battle in the Sure field. It is too naive to say that I will not plot against myself. But one thing is certain, the future self will definitely not really harm myself. After all, any harm I suffer will be brought to the future with the normal passage of time. Ling Yunpo was thinking carefully when he heard Jinwu Zenran said decisively, this is impossible. Why is it impossible? Before Yuan Jinwu spoke, an impatient Shushan disciple asked first. I said it's impossible, it's impossible. Jinwu Zenran said angrily. This Jindan Zenran spoke arrogantly, and even if everyone still had doubts, they couldn't question it anymore. Everyone was silent, followed Jinwu Zenran into the door, and then went down to the second floor of the locking demon tower. According to what Jinwu Zenran said before, this time everyone was not allowed to choose the 8 gates at will, and the brothers and sisters in the same peak must enter the same trial. The reason is very simple. Similar to the transmission mechanism of the Li Palace, no matter which door you choose in the demon locking tower, as long as there is a sequence of entry, you will be teleported to a different demon locking space. In this case, the probability of the trial taker being alone is very high, which gives the murderer an opportunity to take advantage of it. The reason why the Shushan disciples on the same peak are required to enter the trial environment together is to prevent anyone from being alone. In this case, if the murderer takes the risk of committing a crime again, the victim will most likely be a Shushan disciple on the same peak as the murderer. Such a design is indeed a proper response. However, Ling Yunpo subconsciously felt that the murderer would not stop because of this. Junior brother, which door do you want to go this time? Zisu said lightly. Although she tried her best to suppress the ups and downs of her voice, Ling Yunpo still keenly noticed that the senior sister's heart was already in chaos. It was not because she was framed, but because the murderer left a message in the name of Su Jian, which made senior sister a little suspicious. After all, even if Ling Yunpo himself was not confident enough to convince himself that his cheap master Su Jian was still in seclusion in the belly of King Luo Peak, senior sister. Ling Yunpo said in a deep voice, how about we not have the trial this time and go to Shaiman to rest? Yes. Senior sister was at a loss, and she agreed without thinking much after hearing the words. Seeing the two people enter Shaiman, the Shushan disciples who were still in the hall secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 118. Sharing a room with senior sister. Unlike the pitch-black Dead Gate passage, the Rest Gate passage was built magnificently, a bit like the style of the Zhao Palace in the secret realm of the Queen Mother of the West. Whether it is the complex and bright wall reliefs or the long burning lamps set up at intervals, they all show the unique and gorgeous style of the classical Immortal Cultivation era. At the end of the corridor, there is a room, which is very spacious, with tables, chairs, beds and cabinets. There are also plush fur blankets spread on the ground, cotton curtains hanging in front of the beams, soft cushions placed beside the bed. Lying on them is comfortable and thick, soft and warm, making people feel tired and just want to have a good sleep. Ling Yunpo sat down beside the bed, sorted out his thoughts a little, and asked in a deep voice, Senior sister, can we produce evidence to prove that master is indeed in seclusion and cannot appear in the outside world? Zisu was silent for a while, then sat down beside him and sighed. No. This is natural. The place where Su Jian is in seclusion is now a black box, and no one can know what is going on inside. On the other hand, if it was confirmed that Su Jian was still alive, then the situation of King Luo Peak would not be as dire as it is now. Ling Yunpo also sighed. The real aggrieved part of this matter is that the murderer obviously could not be from King Luo Peak, but because everyone had no clues about the murderer, they could only temporarily blame it on King Luo Peak. The reason why I chose to bring my sister to Shaiman to stay was to try to eliminate the vigilance of the Shushan disciples. Of course, if the murderer took this opportunity to commit another crime, the two of them could completely clear their suspicion, although the possibility was not high. At worst, they could just rest all the way. In fact, the two of them really needed to go only to the 28th and 30th floors. There was a blood pool on the 28th floor, and the sword immortals of the marrow washing stage bathed in it, which could quickly cleanse the meridians and promote the progress of the marrow washing. There was also a cocoon forest on the 30th floor, and the sword immortals of the transformation palace stage practiced in it, which could quickly improve the jade palace and promote the progress of the transformation palace. Apart from the two levels that Ling Yunpo and Zisu were going to, the other levels of the trial also had various games and various rare items, but they were not critical and could be discarded when necessary. Ling Yunpo's vision was extremely high now. Not to mention the monster materials used for alchemy and weapon making. Even if a bundle of 10th level flying swords was thrown in front of him, he might not even look at it. Sister. After sighing for a while, Ling Yunpo found a topic to talk about. Tell me about Master. I see that other people seem to hate and fear Master Kisha. What did Master do in the past to provoke these villains who hold grudges like this? Master. Zisu sighed. He is not actually bloodthirsty and warlike, he is just old-fashioned. The reason why he doesn't hold back when fighting with others is because he thinks that sword immortals should go all out, and holding back is an insult to the opponent. Moreover, Master actually complained privately about those opponents who challenged him but were easily killed by him, saying that those people were obviously not good at swordsmanship, but they didn't want to practice swordsmanship well. Instead, they were impulsive and aggressive all day long, clamoring to fight with him, which made him very puzzled. Ling Yunpo. Good guy, this cheap master is a bit despicable. He is like the kind of high school bully who would say, your grades are so bad, why don't you stay up all night to study? But, Master is not being sarcastic. As if afraid that Ling Yunpo would not believe it, Zisu emphasized again, Master is really puzzled. Look, when someone challenges him to a duel, he can't refuse. But letting him win in a duel is not in line with his code of conduct. He goes all out, but the opponent is too weak to withstand his blow. So I think it's unfair for the outside world to accuse Master of killing indiscriminately. You obviously can't beat him, but you insist on challenging Master to a duel. Isn't that courting death? How can you blame Master? Ling Yunpa was speechless. Senior Sister Anne's remarks seemed to be logically impeccable, but in fact, they were sophistry. You killed someone else's senior brother or junior brother, and they are resentful and desperate to seek revenge on you. Is it their own fault? But Senior Sister must protect Master, and it is normal to make specious arguments, just like I want to protect Senior Sister unconditionally. I'll tell you in secret, Master actually has a weakness. Zisu blinked, and suddenly whispered to him, you can't tell anyone. What weakness? Ling Yunpa pricked up his ears. I promise not to tell anyone. Master's alcohol tolerance is very poor. Zisu said with a smile, if he doesn't use his true essence to refine the power of alcohol, he will almost get drunk after drinking. And after getting drunk, he will start to repent and cry out all the things that make him feel guilty. In the past, my mother spent a lot of energy to take care of him when he was drunk. Ling Yunpa laughed in his heart when he heard this. It's a joke that a cultivator can get drunk and act crazy. But he also understands that Su Jian is just using this to vent his pressure. To be able to let this master speak freely, he and Zisu's mother must have a very deep relationship. In short, Master is not as cold-blooded and ruthless as the outside world says. Zisu concluded, if he wants to kill for us, he will kill openly. It is impossible for him to hide his head and show his tail and leave any words. That is not his style at all. I think Master Jingwu can guess this. Ling Yunpo sighed and said, but who is the murderer? After all, there is still no clue. Speaking of this, I think Yuan Jinyu's words make some sense. Zisu suddenly said in a deep voice, then Kunlun Chief Qiu Chang's time disappeared as soon as he entered the demon locking tower. Isn't he the biggest suspect? And Master Jing also protected him in various ways. It's really hard for people not to be suspicious. Well, junior brother, what do you think? What do I think? I think it's completely nonsense, okay? Why should I make things difficult for myself in the future? Of course, these words could not be said to Senior Sister Anne, so Ling Yunpo could only pretend to agree, and then raised questions and said, so, Qiu Chang's time is indeed a bit suspicious, but from his words and deeds, he seems to be a very upright cultivator, and I don't think it's likely that he would do these things. I don't think so. Zisu frowned and said, look, he could have come earlier, but he deliberately came late. After everyone arrived, he put on an exaggerated air of being pretentious and came late. At first glance, he is a frivolous person. Ling Yunpa was furious when he heard this. What does a frivolous person mean? What a pretentious person. Senior Sister, this is called pretentious, okay? But since Senior Sister Anne said this, Ling Yunpa couldn't directly refute her, so he could only persuade her in a roundabout way. You can't know a person's heart by knowing his face. I think we should not make a hasty judgment and just wait and see what happens next. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 119. Holding your hand, sailing on the riverbed. The group continued to descend to the 7th floor, where the second victim appeared. The victim was from the Xuanzi Peak lineage and died in a certain area of Jingmen. He was originally traveling with his brothers, but was at the end of the team. When passing through a forest, someone suddenly discovered that the brother was missing, so the team went back to look for him. As a result, they found that the victim had died under a tree, and the surrounding ground was covered with frozen frost. The front of the deceased's neck was stabbed, and the throat was cut by the sword. Blood spurted out from the wound. At the bottom of the tree trunk where the body was leaning, a line of small words was carved with sword energy. The evil speaker, lock the throat and seal the tongue. Su Jian. The body and the bark with the words were taken back to the hall by the disciples of Xuanzi Peak and personally identified by Master Jingwu. When Ling Yunpo and Zisu returned from Shaiman, they saw the disciples of Shushan watching the restored scene and the body, each with a solemn look. Then, Ling Yunpo discovered that the Shushan disciples at the scene seemed to be avoiding his gaze at the same time. Since he and his sister would go to Shaiman in public every time and would not return until they needed to go downstairs, they could basically rule out suspicion. But the question is, who is the murderer? At present, all clues point to Su Jian. These clues are so obvious that they can almost be considered a frame-up. Jin and Zhenran killed the Foundation building disciples, so is it a sneak attack? If it is a sneak attack, it is a sneak attack, but what does it mean to sign a name? Most of the Shushan disciples actually think that this must have nothing to do with Sujian. Of course, this does not prevent everyone from being afraid of King Luopeak, because the only two victims at present have one thing in common. They had a grudge against King Luopeak, or more precisely, against Tenzisu. One of the victims had used a trick to plot against Tenzisu in a sword duel more than 10 years ago, and almost injured her. The cause of death was a sword in the back, and there was a message of the scene saying those who plot will be stabbed in the back. The second victim had once colluded with the disciples of various peaks, inciting hatred and calling for the isolation of King Luopeak. The cause of death was a laceration in the neck. There was a message of the scene saying those who spread evil will have their tongues and throats locked. Even if the murderer was not Sujian, the logic of his crime was very obvious, that is, he specifically targeted the Shushan disciples who had a grudge against King Luopeak. But who among the Shushan disciples at the scene dared to say that they had no grudge against King Luopeak? Everyone reflected on themselves. What counts as a grudge? If it counts as just saying bad things, then it is estimated that all Shushan would be wiped out in one fell swoop. Therefore, everyone tried not to look at Ling Yunpo and Zisu. It's not that they suspected that they were the murderers, but they were afraid that if they had any eye contact with them now, they would be found dead on the spot, with no eyes, and a line of words written next to them. What are you looking at? What's wrong with looking at you? Sujian. The Shushan disciples had this concern, but Master Jingwu had no scruples. He directly called Ling Yunpo and Zisu and asked them if they had any clues about the murderer. Excuse me for being blunt. Ling Yunpo said bluntly, since the other party pretended to be my master to commit the crime, it is clear that he cannot be a friend of King Luopeak. As for the enemies of King Luopeak, I believe you should know that there are so many that it is almost impossible to count them. The murderer must have chosen King Luopeak as a cover for this reason. Of course I know. Jin Wuzenran interrupted him and said, tell me, do you have any clues? Ling Yunpo and Zisu looked at each other, and after a long while they said, no. Go. Jin Wuzenran said impatiently. Next, he ignored the protests of the disciples of Chuanzi Peak and forcibly confiscated their natal swords, and restricted their freedom of choice, requiring them to stay in a hall on each floor and be interrogated, and not to leave. Everyone continued to go down to the 8th floor, and Ling Yunpo went to find Jin Wuzenran to ask if the two could continue the trial normally. After all, it was always resting with Senior Sister and Shaiman, a man and a woman living in the same room, which was detrimental to Senior Sister's reputation. Of course, the main reason was that Ling Yunpo was afraid that he could not control himself and make a mistake. The big bed in the Shaiman area was too soft. Since the murderer committed the crime when you were in the Shaiman area, then the suspicion on you can be basically ruled out. Master Jingwu thought for a moment and said, of course, you'd better choose the death gate and conduct the trial in a different area from other disciples. No problem. Zisu said coldly. So the two entered the death gate, passed through a long dark corridor, and finally entered a new area. This world is in deep water, but there are no rivers, lakes or seas. The bottom of the bank is floating, the water plants are swaying, and countless fish are migrating and circling, with silver scales and long tails, and elegant postures. Both of them are monks of the marrow washing stage. Not only can they take a turtle breath to avoid consuming oxygen, but they can also resist the pressure of deep water. In addition, the flying swords are all water-based, so they are like fish in water when flying swords and move freely. After going forward for more than 10 kilometers, Zisu chatted with his junior brother. There should be a cave at the bottom of the river ahead, with many river spirits and water monsters in it. Go deep into the cave, and you will encounter a water viper. I failed to kill it last time and let it escape. In the cave where it is entrenched, there seemed to be some treasures, but I didn't look carefully. Ling Yunpo was stunned when he heard this. There seemed to be some treasures, but I didn't see them. Senior sister, how can you say these words in a matter-of-fact tone? Alas, my senior sister is too simple. She has only used swords all her life and has no other external objects. Of course, she doesn't like these low-level magic weapons. But I can't just sit back and watch. Ling Yunpo even remembered that before he traveled to this world, he had watched a documentary about marine environmental protection. It said that humans dumped all kinds of garbage into the ocean. For example, plastic bags will not be decomposed for 10,000 years, and often entangle marine life such as dolphins and turtles, eventually causing them to die helplessly. Senior sister said that there was something deep in the cave at the bottom of the river. It was probably garbage thrown into the water by someone. These treasures, no, these garbage obviously won't decompose by themselves. They may be eaten by small fish, shrimps, and dragons, thus endangering the safety of these aquatic animals. I really can't bear it. For the sake of the blue and clean underwater environment, I have to salvage these garbage. Thinking of this, Ling Yunpo said righteously, "Senior sister, why don't we explore the cave at the bottom of the river again?" "Okay." Zisu agreed immediately. Senior sister is really great at this. No matter what Ling Yunpo asks, she will agree directly and never ask questions. I can only say that she is very doting. The two continued to fly forward on the sword and soon arrived at the cave at the bottom of the river. The entrance to the cave is a gap formed between the rocks at the bottom of the river, which can accommodate two people side by side. Because the passage was narrow and it was impossible to move flexibly, Zisu pressed down the sword light and let the frost sword hang above her head, ready to meet the enemy at any time. She took a few steps into the depths, then turned around and stretched out her hand to Ling Yunpo, smiling. "Junior brother, there is a lot of wet moss here, it is slippery, you should be careful." "Okay, senior sister." Ling Yunpo stretched out his hand for her to hold. The two of them held hands intimately and walked through the inner passage of the rocks at the bottom of the river. Ling Yunpo suddenly had a subtle sense of Jdu, recalling Qiu Chang's hand holding Zhu Yingluyan's hand and running on the long iron chain bridge above the sea of clouds. It was just that he was holding junior sister's usual time, but this time it was senior sister who was holding him. Chapter 120. The 1,000 miles water vein divine traveling talisman. The cave at the bottom of the river was full of jagged rocks. As the terrain gradually went down, the surrounding space became strangely wide. The originally messy river stones on both sides gradually began to be cut neatly, slowly showing traces of human processing. Ling Yunpo moved forward cautiously, and the Kingping sword swayed slowly above his head, like a taut spring, which would shoot out once something unexpected happened. Of course, he hoped that nothing unexpected would happen, so that he could hold his senior sister's hand for a while longer. But the river spirits and water monsters probably didn't know what it meant to spoil the scenery. After walking for about 10 minutes, a shadow suddenly jumped out from the cracks in the corner, like a blue lightning and thunder. However, the frost sword was faster, and it arrived first, nailing it to the rock wall in one go. Ling Yunpo could see clearly that it was a long and narrow water snake with a triangular head and red letters spitting out of its mouth, twisting its body in pain. "Junior brother, be careful, these spirits are best at sneak attacks, and even I was caught off guard and almost got hit," Zisu said softly. Although it was not obvious that she had almost been attacked, Ling Yunpo still nodded in agreement and said, "To be honest, it is true. These demons are too vicious and cruel, so be careful, senior sister." The water snake nailed to the wall suddenly stopped struggling. It was unknown whether it had lost its last breath or was angry at the words of the two humans. Zisu drew out the frost sword and cut off the snake's head with one sword. The two continued to move forward. After going deeper, the surrounding environment changed from cut and spliced rocks to neatly stacked blue stone walls. There was an extra quiet and deep atmosphere under the water. Ling Yunpo looked solemn and prepared for battle. He held the Kingping sword in front of him, alert to possible attacks at any time. But every time he saw a black shadow flash, senior sister's frost sword had already shot out. By the time Ling Yunpo saw clearly what kind of monster was attacking, the other party had already become a dead soul under senior sister's sword. Then senior sister would turn around and say, "Look, isn't it difficult to deal with?" Ling Yunpo wanted to say, "I think you are the most difficult one to deal with, senior sister," but he was a professional spy after all, and would not make such a low-level mistake, so he just nodded obediently, indicating that he had kept it in mind. As they were fighting, senior sister suddenly said strangely, "It seems that there are fewer demons in there this time than last time. Maybe they were frightened by senior sister's strength last time, and many of them escaped in advance." Ling Yunpo replied with a smile. "If that's the case, it's a pity." Zisu said regretfully, "I wanted to take you to see the water viper." When they arrived at the depths of the cave at the bottom of the river, there was indeed no trace of the dragon. Zisu was a little disappointed, but Ling Yunpo was still in high spirits, and pulled senior sister straight to the treasure room of the cave. Almost every cave has a treasure room. To be precise, it is the storage room of the monk's residence. Some magic weapons, flying swords, elixirs, etc. that were obtained by chance and were not used in daily life were thrown away because it was a pity to sell them. So they were all thrown into the treasure room. Ling Yunpo made a brief identification and soon found the location of the treasure room. After letting Kunlun Mirror confirm that there were no traps, he dragged his sister in to search. Most of the piles in the room were spiritual stones that had lost their spiritual energy and were scrapped. They were piled up everywhere like a small mountain. Ling Yunpo used the Kingpin sword to push away the discarded spiritual stones and turned over a water-repellent bead from it. The function of the water-repellent bead is to form a spherical waterless environment with a radius of about 10 feet, and to isolate all water outside. Considering that most monks can take a resting breath and do not need to breathe underwater, this magic weapon is rare and useless. It can only work in special environments, such as the deep sea but with extremely high water pressure. Ling Yunpo put away the water-repellent beads, and heard Zisu beside him laughing. "Brother, look at this." She used the frost sword to push away the pile of stones and found a three-legged bronze tripod inside. Ling Yunpo took a closer look and saw that the small tripod was about the size of his hands, with rust on the surface. It was obvious that the formation on it had failed. There was also a lid on the tripod. When he opened it, he saw a talisman inside. Luo Yan had seen the words on the talisman in the classic Sinew King Temple. It was the 10,000 miles water vein divine travel talisman, which was quite rare even in ancient times. Once this talisman is activated, it can take people from any water vein to another water vein that is not connected to each other, so it can be called a peerless escape artifact. The only flaw is that to charge the 10,000 miles water vein divine travel talisman, you need to use the water essence of Ren and Qi. As mentioned above, the essence of Ren Shui only exists in the deepest part of the North Sea, which is extremely difficult for ordinary cultivators to reach. The essence of Shui is even more rare in the world and cannot be found. Therefore, due to the harsh endurance conditions, the method of drawing this talisman has not been passed down, and it has now been completely lost. However, Ling Yunpo is different. The essence of Shui has been obtained from the Li Palace and refined in the acquired 5 elements of the Great Extinction Divine Light. The essence of Ren Shui has also been obtained from the ancient ruins formation of the Wuzi Islands. Therefore, he has the conditions to use this ancient divine talisman. This talisman looks a bit mysterious. I'll take it back to study it. Ling Yunpo casually found a reason and wanted to take this talisman for himself. Zisu had no objection. For her, even if she found the 2 supreme immortal sword Suminmans in May, as long as her junior brother said, "Senior sister, I want it," she might give it away directly. What is an ancient talisman that can't be recognized? Seeing that his senior sister nodded with a smile, Ling Yunpo went to get the talisman. As soon as his hand touched the talisman, he saw that the lines on it suddenly lit up, and the spiritual energy was flowing, and it had been activated. Ling Yunpo. Wait a minute. I didn't activate it. Such a thought flashed through his mind in an instant, and Ling Yunpo and Zisu disappeared at the same time. Only 2 small vortices were left at the scene, which were the surrounding water flows filling the holes after their bodies disappeared. Soon the stone chamber returned to calm, as if nothing had happened. The 3rd victim appeared. The deceased was the 2nd disciple of the master of Baiun Peak, a female sword cultivator, whose arms were cut off before her death. According to the disciples of Shushan, this sword cultivator was usually kind, and almost never had conflicts with fellow disciples from other peaks, let alone King Luo Peak. The message of the scene of the death was greedy: chop off his arms. Su Jian. After asking other disciples of Baiun Peak about the resources for the female swordsman's practice, Jin Wuzenren had a rough idea in his mind. The murderer was so familiar with the secrets of the Shushan peaks, it must be impossible to be a demon in the Locking Demon Tower, or a person outside Shushan. It must be a disciple from Shushan. It's just that I don't know whether the other party is wandering outside or among the crowd at the scene. His eyes swept over the people present. All the disciples were a little uneasy. Only the disciples of Chuanzi Peak who regained their freedom exchanged glances with gloomy expressions. Chapter 121 Born with Sword Bones, Instant Marrow Cleansing. This is, Ling Yunpo was used to being teleported by the Kunlun mirror, and soon recovered from the dizziness. Looking around, all he could see was a red tide. The 2 are now in a sea of blood. Zisu also calmed down, looked around, frowned and said, "This is the blood pool. Sister, are you saying that we were teleported to the 28th floor by the talisman?" Ling Yunpo asked in surprise. "Yes, if there is no second blood pool in the tower." Zisu rode the sword light and turned in the sky. "Something is wrong." "What's wrong?" "The blood sea space should be open air, and the surroundings are endless." Zisu said in a deep voice, "Junior brother, look." Ling Yunpo looked around, and saw that the sky above his head was not the sky, but ochre-red sandstone, about 10 feet high, extending to the surroundings and slowly descending until the end where the water and the sky meet, giving people a sense of suffocation. In other words, this is not so much a sea pool as it is a large enclosed underground lake. For ordinary people, the danger of a closed underground lake is that the air above the water is closed and the oxygen will be exhausted quickly. But for practitioners, this is not a problem. Ling Yunpo and Zisu cruised along the blood sea for several circles before confirming that there were no openings on the rock wall. Then, the two dived into the blood sea and circled several times, and found that there were no creatures in the sea. It was empty and completely closed by sandstone. There were only about 7 blood corals, with roots inserted deep into the seabed, and porous tops, constantly spitting out bubbles. Ling Yunpo looked at the blood coral and suddenly said, "Sister, do you feel a little hot?" "Hot?" Zisu was slightly startled, then immediately reacted and said happily, "Great. This is the conquering power in the blood sea, trying to enter your body to help you cleanse your marrow and cut your meridians. Find a place to sit, then hold your breath and concentrate, breathe in and out to refine your energy, and try to guide the surrounding blood sea energy into your body." Ling Yunpo suddenly realized what he said, and found a large rock on the seabed nearby, sat on it, crossed his legs, and practiced the Taishang Hunyuan secret records of Shushan. Soon, a very yang and very hot power gradually penetrated into his body from the acupoints all over his body. If it was someone else, they might just feel warm and comfortable, but Ling Yunpo had eaten 4 yochai golden lotus seeds after all, and his acupoints were 0.5% more than ordinary people. He only felt that the heat rushed into his meridians, rushing around unreasonably, as if to ignite every cell in his body. He felt very uncomfortable, and felt that his whole body was sweating like rain. Soon, it mixed with the blood and water around him, and there was no difference between you and me. Zisu, who was guarding nearby, saw that there was a dirty flow around junior brother Lin, like black smoke floating. She knew that it was the turbid air remaining in the meridians and marrow cavity of junior brother Ling's body. At this time, it was squeezed out by the blood sea energy that was exhaled into the body, so she secretly felt relieved. After more than a quarter of an hour, the dirty flow had not stopped, and it was still slowly overflowing from junior brother Ling's pores, which made Zisu feel uneasy again. For ordinary marrow-washing monks, absorbing the blood sea energy to wash the marrow and cut the meridians, it would only take a quarter of an hour at most, which could reduce the length of the entire marrow-washing period to about 40% of the original. As for the remaining turbid air, most of it remained in the narrow corners and dead seams such as the tail end of the spinal cord and the occipital bone behind the head. It was difficult for the blood sea energy to reach it, and it could only be slowly sharpened and removed by one's own true energy. But Ling Yunpo had been washing his marrow and removing turbidity for more than a quarter of an hour, and he still hadn't stopped. Either because he was born with many acupoints and strong meridians, he could absorb more blood sea energy, or because there was too much turbid energy in his body, which made it difficult to remove it, so the progress was slow. Zisu was really anxious, and didn't know what to do, so he could only circle around Ling Yunpo who was meditating, circle around, and circle around again. Almost half an hour had passed, and the blood sea energy in Ling Yunpo's body was finally saturated. To be precise, due to his natural sword bone talent, the meridians in his body were unobstructed, and turbid energy could hardly remain. He used the blood sea energy to forcefully infuse several dead corners of the marrow cavity that were difficult for ordinary human true energy to enter, and cleaned out all the turbid energy and impurities. Finally, Ling Yunpo opened his eyes, his pupils were clear, and his skin was translucent. He had successfully broken through the marrow washing stage and entered the transformation stage. "Sister, I have made a breakthrough." Ling Yunpo opened his eyes and just said one sentence. He saw Sisterin rushing over and hugging his junior brother tightly. "That's great, I'm glad you're okay." She hugged his junior brother with a sense of relief, refusing to let go, muttering. At the same time, she reached out to wipe the tears from her eyes, but forgot that she was in a sea of blood, and the tears had already spread out as soon as they flowed out. Ling Yunpo didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he could only carefully reach out his hand and gently pat Sisterin on the back to comfort her. This Sisterin was good in everything. She was good at fighting, considerate, and protective, but she was too sentimental. If something happened to her, she would be worried and even make a fuss. After confirming that everything was fine, she couldn't help shedding tears and crying with joy. It was really too emotional. Speaking of emotional, Ling Yunpo remembered that Sisterin had said in person that she was also practicing the asking love stream. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but soften his heart, and he hugged Senior Sister with his backhand. The two of them leaned against each other for a while before Anzisu let him go, choking and saying, "I thought you, forget it, it's good that you're okay. Sister, why do you look down on me so much?" Ling Yunpo joked, "How could something go wrong in this mere sea of blood? Let's not talk about that." Anzisu smiled, "The sea of blood here is too strange, and there is no exit at all. Maybe we have to find a direction and dig a hole in the sandstone." "No need to dig a hole." Ling Yunpo took out the one-lay water vein divine travel talisman and said seriously, "This talisman suddenly activated just now, and it teleported you and me here. In this case, we only need to activate it once more to teleport you and me to the next location, but the specific location is unknown." Anzisu thought seriously for a moment and said, "In that case, let's activate this talisman. In the demon locking tower, the many spaces are not physically connected. Simply moving in one direction may not be able to break through the spatial barrier. It is better to use this talisman to teleport." "Yes." Ling Yunpo nodded and said, "Sister, hold me tight, I'm going to activate the talisman." "Okay." Anzisu blushed a little, but still moved closer and gently held his junior brother's hand. They had even hugged each other before, so holding hands was not difficult. Ling Yunpo activated the one-lay water veins divine traveling talisman again, and the two felt dizzy, and then their vision slowly stabilized. This place was in thick fog, the fog was all over the sky, and it was difficult to see the 5 fingers when stretching out a hand. Under the feet was clear water, about knee-high. "This place," Anzisu said uncertainly, "it seems to be the Cloud Sea Sky Realm." Chapter 122. Cloud Sea Giant Cocoon, Rotten Mansion. The Sea of Clouds and Sky Realm is located on the 30th floor of the Demon Locking Tower. According to Senior Sister Anne, this place should be a sea of clouds, with no sky above and no ground below. The surrounding clouds and mists are hazy, and one must always maintain the posture of flying with a sword. However, the place where the two are now is a hard ground under their feet, and there is clear deep water up to the knees. Ling Yunpo looked down and saw that he could clearly see his reflection on the water surface between the fog. Anzisu took his hand and looked around vigilantly. He couldn't see clearly. A few steps away, there was too much obstruction by the clouds and mist, and the sight could not reach it at all, so he could only rely on his spiritual sense to explore. At present, it seems that there are no creatures or buildings around it too. Looking closely, in fact, whether it is the water flow under their feet or the clouds in the sky, they are slowly flowing and floating in one direction. The two continued to move forward in the direction of the water flow. Soon, they came to a cocoon forest. There are a large number of white giant cocoons here, about 10 feet long, which can easily accommodate an adult lying in them. The destination of Anzisu and other Watful-level disciples' trip to the Demon Locking Tower is this Sea of Clouds cocoon forest, but it's really strange. Anzisu circled around the giant cocoon for a few times and said in surprise, "In the cocoon forests that I know of, the giant cocoons are supported by a pillar made of extremely fine silk threads, standing in the air in the Sea of Clouds. I've never seen a giant cocoon lying in the water like this before, nor have I heard of anyone else talking about it. Supported in the air with a silk pillar?" Ling Yunpo asked curiously, "Shouldn't there be a supporting ground?" "Not sure." Anzisu replied, "Many predecessors have tried to fly up, down, forward, backward, left and right at full speed, but they have never detected the boundary of the Sea of Clouds. There are also some kind of raptor monsters living in the Sea of Clouds. Anyone outside the cocoon forest will be attacked by this monster. The farther away from the cocoon forest, the more monsters there are." Anzisu stopped here and exchanged glances with Ling Yunpo. If this place and the Cloud Sea Sky Realm are the same world, then it must be the bottom of the Cloud Sea Sky Realm. All the giant cocoons whose supporting silk pillars are broken fall here. At the same time, because the altitude here is too low, there is no harassment from those raptors and monsters. It is also very simple to verify. Just fly upward from here and see if you can find that cocoon forest supported by the silk pillars. But according to Sister Anne, the range of the cocoon forest is extremely vast, whether it is upward, downward, or east, south, west, or north. Ordinary cultivators can't detect the end at all. God knows how far this bottom is from the height of the cocoon forest. If it takes a long time, such as several days, to arrive, it is definitely not worthwhile just to verify whether this world is the Cloud Sea Sky Realm. Ling Yunpo's eyes fell on the giant cocoon. The most important thing for the cultivators of the waffle level is this giant cocoon. According to records, this giant cocoon has a strange power of time and space. The cultivator trapped in the giant cocoon can fast forward 30 years while maintaining the state of cultivation. These 30 years are equivalent to 30 years of continuous cultivation every day and night, without any external interference, and wholeheartedly perfecting the purple mansion. Although it consumed 30 years of his life, it was probably equivalent to 34 or 35 years of normal cultivation. After all, in the outside world, cultivators cannot maintain the highest efficiency of cultivation every day, and there will always be a period of time when they are not in good condition. The two climbed up the giant cocoon and tentatively stepped on the cocoon mouth. Soon, the cocoon mouth began to wriggle, swallowing Ling Yunpo and Zisu's ankles, then their calves, thighs, half of their bodies, and finally the whole person was trapped in it. Ling Yunpo felt very subtle, and there was a warm, omnipresent, rhythmic pacing pressure coming from all around, which made him think of the uterus filled with amniotic fluid for no reason. However, his consciousness soon became drowsy, which was because the speed of time was slowly increasing. The Southern Dynasty's records of strange things once recorded that a woodcutter was cutting wood and saw a boy playing chess and singing, so he stopped to watch. He was fascinated, and when the boy finished playing chess, the woodcutter found that the wooden handle of the axe was completely rotten. After returning home, he found that 100 years had passed and all the people he knew were gone. As the speed of time increases, the thoughts of the cultivators will also begin to slow down, just like a woodcutter watching a chess game. In the end, the body can only repeat actions mechanically without any ability to think. Therefore, Ling Yunpo quickly calmed down and began to watch the Qi to rotate. While breathing in and out to refine Qi and compress the true Qi into true essence, he tried to use the true essence to warm the inner wall of the purple palace and improve the floors. As the Qi rotated faster and faster, while his consciousness was drowsy, a trace of true essence began to be extracted from the Qi and rotated close to the inner wall of the purple palace. This is what Taoists call dragon and tiger interaction. Kunlun Mirror suddenly spoke, this time and space power feels like a fragment of my body. Seeing Ling Yunpo's consciousness sinking, it knew that the speed of time and space had increased, and this guy could no longer speak. However, the fragment of the main body should not be here. Kunlun Mirror continued to talk to himself, this place is just borrowing its power. The only thing that can be confirmed is that my fragment must be in the locking demon tower, With your current realm, it's too early to plot these. Hurry up and get stronger. About a quarter of an hour later, Ling Yunpo's consciousness finally slowly woke up. He subconsciously used his spiritual sense to look inward, and then he was shocked. Most of the entire Qi was occupied by the true essence, and only 30% of the true Qi was left, slowly floating on the top of the upper mountain. If the true Qi is like a mountain stream, then the true essence is like a big river, and the latter almost crushes the former in quality. As a result, the power and endurance of the sword control technique, Taoism, magic weapons, etc. were doubled. However, Ling Yunpo didn't have time to confirm how much stronger he had become. He just quickly pulled himself out of the giant cocoon and went to find senior sister and next to him. After a while, Zisu also struggled to climb out of the giant cocoon, then rolled down and was caught by Ling Yunpo, who had been waiting for a long time. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo was obviously relieved. Luckily you're okay. How could this giant cocoon be in trouble? Zisu also made a joke, but her expression showed that she was warmed. Put me down first. Okay. Zisu landed on the ground and stood firm. The two found that each other was covered with the mucus in the giant cocoon, which was sticky and uncomfortable. After washing with the water on the ground for a while, Ling Yunpo clapped his hands and smiled. It took 60 years to make the golden mercury elixir, and 30 years to make the giant cocoon in the sea of clouds. Senior sister, isn't this equivalent to 90 years of hard practice? In this way, isn't it certain that the elixir will be of the highest quality? If you want to make the elixir of the 3rd grade, according to the efficiency of normal practice, you need to transform the palace for 200 years to be sure. Zisu pondered for a moment and said calmly, at this rate, if nothing goes wrong, the elixir should be able to reach the 3rd grade. Ling Yunpo hurriedly congratulated the senior sister, and he was also moved in his heart. It takes 200 years to transform the palace to make the 3rd grade golden elixir. The 2nd grade requires at least 400 years. As for the 1st grade elixir, it is inferred that it is at least 800 years, there is no record of it in history. Because before entering the golden elixir realm, the lifespan of a person is at most 200 years. Excluding refining Qi and washing marrow, it is at most 150 years of effort. How can it take 200 years to transform the palace? You have to join a famous and upright sect like me and senior sister Anne, then enter various secret realms, and rely on one adventure after another to have a chance to impact the third grade golden elixir. As for the second grade golden elixir, you must be a genius, don't even think about it. Now as the Shushan Sword Immortal, the treatment is roughly the same as senior sister Anne. First, you get the power of the Golden Mercury Dam, and then get the Yunhei Kongjiao acceleration, which can save you 90 years of hard work. The medicinal power of the Golden Mercury Dam can only be refined to 1 spoonful at most, and more is considered poison. The Yunhei Kongjiao can only enter the acceleration at most once, otherwise it will be insane. According to this step, the lifespan is about 150 years. Excluding the last 10 years for Dan formation, which is equivalent to 230 years of Watfu, the third grade golden elixir is guaranteed, and there is about 170 years to the second grade. After the demon locking tower is over, we have to switch to Qiu Changtai and Luoyang to see if there are any similar secret adventures in Kunlun Tai King Sect and Pengliu King Temple, which can help me accumulate second grade golden elixirs. Seeing Ling Yunpo's expression as if his heart was surging, Zisu couldn't help but smile. If my junior brother and I can both become third grade elixirs, then one day when Master comes out of seclusion, I can also say that I have lived up to his expectations and maintained King Luo Peak well. Chapter 123. Cloud Weaving Spiders, Sword Mountain Dragon. After slightly consolidating their explosive state, Ling Yunpo and Zisu began to explore the surroundings. Passing through a large number of empty cocoons lying in the water, the two continued to move forward along the direction of the water flow and saw more standing silk pillars. The so-called silk pillars are silk pillars. According to ancient records, 3 lines make a strand, 3 strands make a pull, 3 pulls make a bundle, 3 bundles make a twist, 3 twists make a tangle, 3 tangle make a branch, 3 branches make a stem, 3 stems make a trunk, and there are 180 trunks, which are intertwined with each other to form silk pillars, holding up empty cocoons. They have infinite length, but no one knows where their roots are, as if in the abyss. At this time, the two seem to be at the roots of these silk pillars, which was the bottom of the abyss recorded in ancient books. The silk threads were entangled and knotted at the bottom, submerged in the water. There were also a large number of spiders with slender and light bodies, walking on the water. They were extremely timid. When they saw Ling Yunpo and Zisu come in, they all scattered, stepping on a large number of ripples on the water. So these are the empty cocoons woven by these spiders. Zisu smiled suddenly. Following the gaze of his senior sister, Ling Yunpo saw a large number of unformed empty cocoons scattered between the roots of the silk pillars, some of which were more than half completed, and some were only 1/3 woven. These are cloud-weaving spiders. Kunlun Mirror suddenly said in the Sea of Consciousness, they are a kind of time and space monsters that feed on incomplete history, which of the timelines I told you about before. It couldn't help but sigh. Cloud-weaving spiders are harmless by nature, but even they are imprisoned here. It seems that the purpose of building this demon-locking tower is definitely not for the so-called guard against demons. The demon-locking tower was not built by the Shanking sect of Shushan. Ling Yunpo said disapprovingly. Shushan said that it was built by human beings to guard against demons. Where did they get the evidence? They are just making arbitrary fabrications and interpretations based on their own political purposes. But Jin, I thought that as an ancient thing, you would know the secrets of the demon-locking tower. It turns out that you only know a little about it. I'm the mirror in the palace of Queen Mother of the West, not the mirror of the mortal world. How could I know everything about the human world? Kunlun Mirror said angrily. If not, forget it. Its voice paused for a moment, and then said, the timeline woven by the cloud-weaving spider must extend from the past to the future. Therefore, the time and space of this world is discontinuous. The higher you fly, the longer the space will be stretched, and you will never be able to fly to the end. So you should use the 10,000 miles water veins divine travel talisman to leave. Ling Yunpo was speechless for a while before saying, why does this broken talisman take us to some abnormal places? Can't it just teleport us out of the tower? All water veins have extremely mysterious connections in the water system of the 5 elements. The 10,000 miles water veins divine travel talisman only teleports you from the upstream of this mysterious connection to the downstream. Kunlun Jing said meaningfully, what's more, if you leave the demon-locking tower now, it may not be a good thing. Not a good thing? What do you mean? Oh. Ling Yunpo's mind turned quickly, and he immediately realized that this was related to the upcoming death calamity mentioned by Qiu Changtai. In other words, during the time when my senior sister and I were away, some changes that were extremely unfavorable to us had already occurred outside. Thinking of this, Ling Yunpo said to Anzisu, "Sister, if we continue to fly upwards, we don't know where we will arrive. You must know that the Cloud Sea Sky realm is almost infinitely high and infinitely deep, and it has never been explored to the edge. Why don't we use the talisman again and jump to the next water source?" "Of course we can." Anzisu hesitated and said, "But this time it was activated once, it jumped from the 8th floor to the 28th floor. The second time it was activated, it jumped to the 30th floor, and it seems to have been jumping to the bottom of the demon locking tower. The deeper the demon locking tower goes, the more powerful the imprisoned demons will be. If it exceeds the 30th floor, it will have the strength of the Golden Pill stage. Isn't this too dangerous?" Ling Yunpo: "That's true. Now that the marrow cleansing is completed, and he has the power of 30 years of hard practice at the Wafu stage, the trip to the demon locking tower can be said to have made a lot of money, and there is no need to take further risks. If Qiu Changtian hadn't reminded him, he would have found ways to withdraw from the trial and return to King Luo Peak to drink the golden mercury danwu." However, considering the trip to the palace, Ling Yunpo still had some confidence in his golden finger, so he said to senior sister Anne, "That's true, why don't we fly up first? If we can't find the exit of this world, how about coming down and activating the talisman to jump?" "Okay." Anzisu agreed naturally. The two of them flew up along the silk pillars with sword lights. After flying for 6 or 7 hours, they still couldn't see the end of the pillars. They only saw it extending upward into the sea of clouds and downwards into the foggy mountains, and there was no end to both ends. Anzisu sighed, and could only press the sword light again with Ling Yunpo. After a long time, they finally returned to the water again. Ling Yunpo took out the Wanli water vein divine travel talisman, injected his true essence, and activated it. The two disappeared again. After a while, countless cloud-weaving spiders rustled and poked their heads out from behind the silk pillars, cautiously emerging. They surrounded the place where Ling Yunpo had stood, looking around, as if sensing something. As the world spun, Ling Yunpo and Anzisu came to another world. When he opened his eyes, he saw the red river water gushing down, washing and slapping the banks on both sides, like a roaring dragon. "Have we returned to the Blood Sea on the 28th floor?" Ling Yunpo was in a trance, and he heard Anzisu beside him clenching his teeth and squeezing out a few words from his teeth, with a voice that was forced to be calm. "Junior brother, look ahead." Ling Yunpo suddenly looked up and saw a huge dragon perched on the top of the red sandstone peak at the source of the surging river. The dragon's body was almost as long as the mounting, with golden dragon scales arranged neatly, and colorful wings attached to its side. Several thick chains pierced its lower body, binding it firmly to the blade-like mounting. Blood continued to flow down along the wounds caused by the chains, like a spring. However, its upper body could move freely. At this moment, it lowered its huge head, and its pair of cold and ruthless golden vertical pupils stared at Ling Yunpo and Anzisu from a close distance, as if a giant was looking at ants. Ling Yunpo could even feel the dragon's breathing. When it inhaled, the wind blew forward, and when it exhaled, the wind blew backward, alternating back and forth, carrying abundant water vapor. 2. It finally spoke, and although it tried to whisper, the sound was still like thunder. Two humans who were not yet at the transformation stage. "How did you get here?" Ling Yunpo was silent for a moment, then he pulled Anzisu, who was standing next to him as if facing a great enemy, and slowly said, "The 10,000 miles water vein divine travel talisman." The dragon tilted its head slightly and stared at the talisman in his hand. "I see." Chapter 124 Prisoner's Dilemma. Trust senior sister. The giant dragon was perched on the ninth mounting. Its tail kept swinging back and forth, accompanied by frequent and violent landslides, and a large amount of incorrect soil and rocks fell into the Kaijiang River. Although it was pierced and bound by chains, which would cause the wound to continue bleeding, it did not seem to be weak due to blood loss. The upper body of the giant dragon was motionless, and its golden vertical pupils stared at the two people quietly. The invisible fear as majestic as a mountain slowly fell with its sight. Then, it suddenly opened its mouth slowly, revealing a human expression that looked like a smile. "Two humans, I want to play a game with you." Ling Yunpo did not answer, but silently approached the direction of the senior sister. Anzisu's fingers were slightly bent, and the frost sword was ready to go. "Don't try to resist with force." The giant dragon continued to laugh strangely. "With the gap between you and me in realm, you have no hope of winning." As soon as the voice fell, some extremely terrifying pressure descended directly out of thin air. The two of them changed their expressions at the same time, sensing some kind of invisible restraint that was difficult to break free of, pressing their consciousness and limbs so that they could not move, as if they were fragile frogs that were roughly stuffed into a small jar. The next second, the pressure suddenly disappeared, as if everything just now was just an illusion. Ling Yunpo and Zisu looked at each other, and each read horror and fear in the other's eyes. My game is called Prisoner. The giant dragon blew gently, and a thick fog rose up, separating Ling Yunpo and Zisu. In the thick fog, Ling Yunpo found that his vision was restricted, his voice disappeared, and his consciousness could not be used, just like the green fog obscuring the mountains sealed on the Kingping sword. This is the true method of the transformation of the 5 elements of water. The voice of the giant dragon came slowly from the fog. In this method, light, sound, spiritual consciousness, all invisible transmissions are subject to me. In other words, you and your senior sister are now my prisoners. The rules of the game are very simple. The giant dragon continued slowly. Although you can't see or hear her, you know that your senior sister is by your side. You can choose whether to kill her. Of course, she can also make a choice. If both of you choose not to do it, then I will let you go. If both of you choose to do it, then I will destroy your natal swords. But, if one of you chooses to do it and the other chooses not to do it, then, the person who doesn't do it will be killed, and the person who does it, its voice paused slightly, and then it said casually, I will give him a reward. Of course, it's a real reward. Flying swords, magic weapons, Taoist methods, rare objects, in short, it depends on my mood. The more unbelievable the expression on the face of the person who is betrayed, seriously injured and dying, the happier I will feel, and the corresponding reward will be more valuable. As the dragon spoke slowly, Ling Yunpo's mind began to work rapidly. This difficult problem is actually a game proposition. From a purely theoretical model, if I choose not to betray, there are only 2 outcomes, leaving safely or being killed. If I choose to betray, there are also 2 outcomes, getting a reward or having my natal sword destroyed. Comparing these 4 results, it can be found that the dragon's rule design is obviously encouraging participants to betray and kill each other. The fog rises to block the 2 people's sight and hearing, and is also to further intensify the suspicion between each other. Will the senior sister betray me? Or the senior sister does not want to betray me, but she thinks I will betray her, so will she choose to be forced to betray me? In fact, if the trust between each other cannot overcome the suspicion, then decisively choosing to take action is the best choice under this game condition. However, the facts cannot be summarized by a purely theoretical model. With Kyo Chang's time's advance warning, Ling Yunpo certainly would not make a mistake, so he said directly, I choose not to do it. Don't worry. The dragon's voice was somewhat playful, wait until she makes a choice. Ling Yunpo, are you trying to scare me? Sorry, I have received professional training and I am definitely not afraid. However, as time slowly passed, he could not help but become a little anxious instinctively. Senior sister and wouldn't, impossible, impossible, if she wanted to kill me, she could have done it a long time ago, why hesitate until now? Maybe senior sister is also hesitating, this is even more impossible. For me, she can even give up her own future, how could she betray me because of this suspicion? Reason, emotion and instinct, in Ling Yunpo's mind, constantly fighting, back and forth. Reason told him that senior sister didn't need to hesitate, and emotion insisted that senior sister would not choose to betray, but instinct kept giving feedback of strong uneasiness. Ling Yunpo realized that deep in his heart, he always had an instinctive sense of insecurity. It was a natural anxiety that refused to trust anyone, which was stimulated by the pressure of self-vigilance during his long career as a spy. He joined King Luo Peak not because he really wanted to be a disciple of Shushan, but to seize the fragment of the booty and stone of the Shanking sect of Shushan. Once something happened, he would undoubtedly become a traitor to Shushan. How would his senior sister look at him, a junior brother who had deliberately ambushed him? As long as his thoughts slipped to this point, Ling Yunpo would start to think about it, and he would not be able to completely eliminate the last bit of suspicion in his heart. However, the giant dragon in front of him seemed to have finally lost his patience. Looking at Ling Yunpo who refused to speak, and Zisu who was determined not to waver on the other side, it finally exhaled a long breath of turbid air, blowing the hair and robes of the 2 people. Okay, it's really boring. You can go. As soon as the voice fell, the thick fog dispersed instantly. Ling Yunpo looked at senior sister who was so close to him, and his heart was suddenly filled with a sense of relief, and at the same time, he felt guilty for doubting senior sister. However, he hid the latter very well, showing an expression of "I knew it would be like this" on his face, and smiled and stretched out his hand. "Senior sister." "Yeah." Zisu also stretched out her hand and held him together. Ling Yunpo immediately activated the Wanlei Water Vein Divine Travel Talisman, and under the cold gaze of the Sword Mountain Dragon, he and Zisu teleported away. After a long time, the dragon yawned lazily. "It seems that I won." A sword light turned out from the belly of the mountain. It was Qiu Chang Tian, the chief disciple of Cunning, who was flying in the air with a sword, standing with his hands behind his back, and said lightly, "HMPH." Sparks spurted out of the dragon's nostrils. "You've known these two Shushan disciples for a long time, and you know that they practice the Taoism of the Wen King's dream, right? This has nothing to do with our bet." Qiu Chang Tian lowered his eyelids and said indifferently, "Or does Lord Yinglong intend to deny it?" "Yeah." The dragon showed a half smile and said, "Why would I regret it? Anyway, even if I lose the bet, it's still in my favor." It folded the 5-colored wings on its back and released its extremely majestic dragon power, but it didn't aim at Qiu Chang Tian in the air, but just radiated it aimlessly in all directions. Suddenly, the Red River almost stopped, the Knife Mountain exploded inch by inch, and the sky of the earth seemed to change color. Qiu Chang Tian, driving the Jade Dragon Sword, was like a small boat in a storm under this terrifying dragon power, almost shaky. Soon the giant dragon withdrew its pressure and said lazily, "It's done." Qiu Chang Tian stabilized his body in a panic, and remained silent. He just asked the Kunlun mirror in his heart. After getting the reply of "it has been burned," he nodded solemnly. "Very good, remember your promise." The giant dragon spit out another drop of blood, floating in front of him. "If you have the opportunity to go to the East Empire Realm, go find my daughter and take her to the North Sea Nether Realm." "Where is your daughter? What characteristics can be used for identification?" Qiu Chang Tian took out the clean bottle, put the blood bead in it, and asked solemnly. "Her nickname is Dragon Fox." The giant dragon was silent for a long time, then replied, "She has the blood of human, dragon and fox. Although she looks like a white fox, she has the golden eyes of a dragon. Such a mixed-race appearance should be unique in the Eastern Empire Realm. As for her location, I have been imprisoned in the tower for at least 100,000 years. How do I know? I think she should be with her mother. If you see her, please tell her mother for me." "Tell what?" "No, nothing." The giant dragon closed his eyelids, lay down on the mountain of knives again, and coiled up his body with force. Chapter 125. Su Jian did it, confirmed. Master Jingwu quickly released a sword light, rushed out of the wounded area, and returned to the hall. His expression was extremely stern and cold, as if he was suppressing great fear and rage, so that the Shushan disciples present, under his cold gaze, all turned their eyes away involuntarily. "Ling Yunpo, where is Zisu?" Master Jingwu said in a cold voice, with no warmth in his voice at all. "They haven't returned yet." Lin Yulanzhen stepped out of the line and bowed, saying, "Master, have the Wooten Peak disciples who entered the injury gate to train found any clues?" "All the Wooten Peak disciples are dead." Master Jingwu said coldly, "The murderer is Su Jian, the 7 Killers Master of King Luo Peak." A noisy wave of voices, whether fear or anger, immediately erupted from the Shushan disciples. Lin Yulanzhen was shocked and asked, "Master, are you sure? You should know that this hall is the only passage connecting the upper and lower floors. There are Shushan disciples here all the time. We can guarantee that no one else has passed through here. If the murderer on the upper floor is Su Jian, how did he hide from all of us and quietly go down to this floor?" Master Jing laughed in anger. "I went to the injury gate to find those Wooten Peak disciples who had not returned, and saw Su Jian standing in the middle of the corpses with my own eyes, and he also exchanged several swords with me." "Lin Yulanzhen, do you doubt that what I said is false?" Lin Yulanzhen was speechless, and the Shushan disciples around him were all silent. No one expected that the murderer was actually Su Jian. And it was confirmed by Jingwu himself. "Listen carefully." Jingwu said sternly, "The demon-locking tower trial has been temporarily cancelled. I will take all the responsibility. Everyone, follow me out of the town now. If you have any clues about Ling Yunpo and Zisu, please report at any time." At this point, he seemed to remember something and said angrily, "Has anyone seen Kunlun Chief Qiu Chang Tian?" Before he finished speaking, as if he had timed it perfectly, Qiu Chang Tian appeared from behind that Jinwen and bowed to Jingwu. Then, including Jingwu, all the Shushan disciples were shocked. On the other side, Ling Yunpo activated the Wanlei Water Vein Divine Travel Talisman and teleported to the next water source with Zisu. As soon as I opened my eyes, I felt the huge water pressure. I don't know how many thousands of meters below the sea the environment here is. The light is dim, the visibility is extremely poor, and the water temperature is extremely cold. The cold is like a sore on the bone, pressing from all directions without dead ends. Before the two of them could regain their balance, a pair of huge golden vertical pupils suddenly appeared in the darkness ahead. Then another pair of golden pupils, and then the ferocious head of a dragon covered with scales and tentacles. Two huge dragons in the deep sea. Ling Yunpo held his breath. He knew that these aquatic dragons were different from human cultivators and were born with extremely strong strength. Its initial form was a water viper, with strength equivalent to that of a human cultivator at the foundation building stage. Its evolved form was a dragon, with strength at the golden elixir stage. If it were any other cultivator at the golden elixir stage, without the golden elixir stage, it would probably not even be able to penetrate the scales of the dragon. But Ling Yunpo had practiced the Arctic Thunder as Kyo Chain Tian, and this thunder was a special thunder for dragons, so he was not completely powerless against a dragon at the golden elixir stage. It was just, he held his hands in his sleeves and silently clenched the Wanle Water Vein Divine Travel Talisman. He couldn't activate it. This damn talisman has exhausted its water-based spiritual power after so many teleportations and jumps. It needs to be recharged with Renangi Water Essence. It was unknown how long it would take to recharge. The two were just waiting in full battle array when they heard the dragon on the right suddenly open its mouth and speak in a human voice, threateningly. How could a human cultivator come here? Tell the truth and I will spare your lives. The dragon on the left was not willing to be outdone, and growled. Let me eat them first. The dragon on the right opened his eyes wide, then turned his head and said to his companion. Don't be greedy for food and act on impulse. We can find blood food again, but we must first find out why the human cultivators appeared here. There is only one entrance to the sea here, and they can't have sneaked in without being noticed by the guards, so they can only have come out from the place where the adult was imprisoned. We have to ask for the way to that place. The dragon on the left acted as if it had suddenly realized something, and roared. Then I will eat them first. It opened its bloody mouth, and couldn't hold back, and came roaring directly. Ling Yunpo and Zisu had already tensed their nerves, and immediately shot the Thunder Sword and Frost Sword at the head of the dragon. Even to be on the safe side, Ling Yunpo pretended to activate the sword technique while shooting out the Thunder Sword, but in fact he shot out the Arctic Thunder in his hand. Two sword lights, one gold and one white, dazzled the eyes and pierced straight into the dragon's mouth. The dragon was not afraid at all. Relying on its sharp teeth, it wanted to bite the flying swords of the two low-level human monks in two. As a result, before it could close its mouth, it felt the extremely strong and cold breath around the Arctic Thunder. Some kind of instinctive and extremely bad premonition of crisis emerged, which frightened it and quickly shrank its head back, but it was too late to dodge. It was hit by the Arctic Thunder and exploded into a bloody mess. Not only that, the cold thunder was still pouring into its wound, causing the dragon to shake its body in pain. It was almost unable to maintain its sanity and went crazy. Zisu pinched the sword formula, and the frost sword instantly pierced into the wound, infusing the sword energy into it, and then pulled it out cleanly. As a result, the moment she pulled it out, the dragon next to her turned around and exhaled cold air, freezing most of the sword. Zisu's body trembled slightly, obviously because the frost sword was damaged by the higher level cold air, and through the key of her natal sword, she also suffered considerable damage. But she was experienced in combat after all, and behind her risky behavior, she had already calculated it. Using the frost sword as bait to attract the dragon to turn around, another cold light shot out from her sleeve like lightning, as fast as lightning, as bright as frost and snow, and fiercely pierced into the dragon's golden vertical pupil. This dragon has lived in the demon-locking tower for many years. It is experienced in dealing with similar-sized creatures, but it has no experience in dealing with human monks. When it was hit hard, the whole dragon immediately became violent. Just as it was about to use all its magical powers, it heard Zisu chanting a spell. The deep ice is 3 feet deep, and the snow covers thousands of miles. In an instant, a large number of frost flowers appeared out of thin air on the dragon's body and quickly spread to the surrounding scales. While one dragon was hit by the Arctic Thunder and went berserk, and the other dragon was stabbed in the golden pupil and temporarily restrained by the frost method, Zisu had already pulled Ling Yunpo, and the two of them quickly drove the sword light outward and phlegmatically. A moment later, a violent dragon roar sounded in the distance. The sound was so loud that it could almost penetrate golden split rocks, and it shook the surrounding sea water. If the two escaped a little slower, they would be involved in the dragon's magical powers. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo hurriedly confirmed Nzisu's situation. Fortunately, her face was only slightly pale, but she didn't lose her blood color. It was probably because the cold air slightly entered her body, which should not hinder her subsequent actions. So Ling Yunpo continued to watch his true essence, secretly colluding with the water divine light in the sea of Qi, and charging the talisman at full speed. Fortunately, this one-way water vein divine travel talisman can jump as long as there is water, without any spatial obstruction. The disadvantage is that the landing point of the jump cannot be chosen at all. Of course, there is actually no other choice at this time. If this talisman is not used, the two will not be able to run far, and they will be caught up and killed by the two dragons. We still have to quickly charge it, and then use the talisman to run away. However, in addition to the frost sword, it seems that the senior sister has used another fairy sword. It seems to be Master's cold sword. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.